different girl than he came with, and an earthquake late warning system goes off in Haiti. Watch as yet another precious fraction of your life passes mercilessly in front of your very eyes. This is the Onion Week in Review. Shortly after discovering he had locked himself outside of his suburban home Thursday, fully nude claims adjuster David Ronzo delivered a moving and thought-provoking treatise on the frailty of the human condition to a slowly gathering crowd of his neighbors. Ronzo, who initially panicked when he realized he was naked, soon turned and faced confused passersby and delivered a stirring oration on the grim facts of mortality, along with the indomitable nature of the human spirit. In other news, a man is arrested for stealing over $50,000 worth of beards from Hank Williams Jr. A pretty lady is playing hard to follow, and a dog named Murph lives up to his name. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
What's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. With fees of less than a penny per transaction, Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. Well, maybe it's your first time listening. If you don't already know this, this is Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie, and we are on the Free Talk Live network. But every single day of the week when we want to, we have a daily podcast called Good Morning Liberty. That's Good Morning Liberty with myself and my best friend Charlie. We've been friends for about 20 years now. So if you want to hear us talk politics every day, 1,429 episodes, then go find Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. Hey, maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll have something you can throw in your daily rotation. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is it's going to be foreign policy. It's going to be what's going on around the world. Sometimes libertarians aren't all that great at that kind of stuff, but we are good at being right when it comes to our foreign policy. That's for sure. Now we have another thing going on in Syria, and I am excited to tell all you guys who are listening right now that next week we'll be bringing you an interview with the great, the one, the only Mr. Scott Horton, who is an expert on all things foreign policy. So I am pumped about that. We'll be talking about his new book, Provoked, and the thing in Syria, which has kind of kicked up since we booked the interview, but I do imagine we'll be talking about that quite a bit. So make sure, if you can't listen next Tuesday night, make sure you also listen to our podcast, Good Morning Liberty. You might also want to go join the Fed Haters Club at joingml.com. We have, 50% off right now because the MSRP is $14 and we're only selling it for $7. So that's a nice, pre-Christmas deal for you guys at $7 a month for the Fed Haters Club. So make sure you find that at joingml.com. We're going to talk about Syria because Assad has finally fallen, and he's in Russia now, sharing a room with Edward Snowden, hanging out in Russia. The State Department, the U.S. government has finally won. They're finally enough. They've achieved what they wanted to achieve over all of this time, and that is toppling Assad in Syria. And, I think some people are supposed to be mad about this, and some people are supposed to be happy. People on the left, I see, are happy, I guess, about this brutal dictator being gone and, free people in Syria and probably democracy, I bet, or something. I don't know what it's going to be. Let me just
I'll tell you what, the last few regimes that have been toppled in the Middle East,
it goes pretty well.
It goes well after that.
Typically, it's a really good thing for the people that are there.
Yeah, they're better off now than they were then.
But right now, this is fun. This is fun to think about this right now. Like, take a snapshot in your mind of the things you're seeing online and the things you're seeing these people post and what the president is saying and, some of these war hawks and deep state people, what they're saying, and just realize that we have been in this moment several times with several countries over the years, over our lifetimes. Typically, it doesn't go very well. Okay. And I'm just going to tell you right now, Assad seems like a pretty bad dude. I don't like him personally. I'm not a fan of him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we've never met.
He seems, I guess personally, I don't know him. He could be fun to hang out with or whatever. But I don't think he's particularly a good dude. I wouldn't vote for him for president or anything. Okay. He's not a libertarian. I'm not a fan of him. Also,
is he any worse than American politicians?
I'd say in his actions, probably not in his beliefs, but probably in his actions.
Yeah.
They're probably about the same. On the flip side,
but if American politicians could get away with the same actions, would they do it?
Yeah, they would. They're all terrible, of course. On the flip side, basically Al Qaeda taking over Syria doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I'm not like, oh, things are about to get so great for everyone. And we're going to have peace in the Middle East or whatever, So sometimes the answer is there's not a good answer. And sometimes the answer is it was better to have the dictator in place, the dictator we know. I'm just saying it's not immediately a great day for everyone that lives in the area. In fact, it could end up being a pretty bad day.
Now, let me push back for all the libertarians out there. Is this not the libertarian dream?
The libertarian dream?
You push out the tyrannical government.
I mean,
Now there's freedom.
But now there is freedom. Yes. I'm sure they're going to sign essentially a copy of the U.S. Constitution there, and everyone's going to live in freedom and peace and harmony afterwards.
Libertarian utopia.
It reminded me of a very important libertarian quote about Syria that I thought we should listen to. Just real quick for fun. I'm sorry to bring it up. I'm sorry. Okay. But this is how I feel.
This is peak libertarianism.
This is how I feel.
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo?
About
Aleppo.
And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
No.
Aleppo is in Syria. It's the epicenter of the refugee crisis.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Well, with regard to Syria, I do think that it's a mess.
That's, honestly, I love that answer. I agree. It is a mess.
So get your brooms.
Yeah, you got to get your brooms because it is a mess for sure. And I'm not trying to be mean to Gary Johnson because to tell you the truth, I don't know the name of every town in all the countries in the world.
Never heard of her.
And sometimes as a libertarian, you're like, we should focus on the U.S. and not be involved in every single nation around the world. And that might mean that I don't need to know the name of every single city everywhere, Mm-hmm. So that, I didn't hate him because of that answer or anything, but I did want to bring that up for fun because we're talking about Syria. Now,
let me give people a bit of advice here, okay?
Yeah.
When you're in a conversation like this, okay, clarify it without making yourself look stupid, okay? Because he just asked, what should we do about Aleppo? And he's like, what? And he goes, Aleppo. Your answer should be in regards to what?
Yeah, that would have made him clarify that a little bit, but
okay, yeah. We should move the U.S. Capitol there? Is that your question?
Yeah.
There are lots of ways in which you can clarify it without being like, I don't know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do appreciate Gary Johnson's honesty. I mean, I think that was kind of refreshing, albeit he should have probably been briefed on some foreign intelligence, not foreign intelligence, but some foreign diplomacy, considering the fact he was running for president.
Yeah, I guess
of the United States of America.
Yeah. I do want to show everyone real quick because it's a largely libertarian audience. This is where Syria is, just so everyone knows. Okay, here's the real important part as we zoom in. This is where Israel is, right here. and this is where Syria is on this map. And it's right next to Jordan, and you got Lebanon over there, and they're next to Iran at the same time. And this is why could be good, could be bad. We'll see. But I think Israel is very invested in this, and we have a new administration that is highly invested in Israel. Or that Israel has highly invested in the new administration.
You can see on this current map, we don't see Aleppo.
No, I can't. Actually, it's not well, it's probably gone now.
Yeah.
You know, there is no more Aleppo anymore. So anywhere, there's your map. Okay. So that's important. So we know that Assad's gone. There for a minute, everyone thought his plane crashed and maybe he was dead. And like, they were showing, this is his plane taking a turn, So it took a turn.
Yeah.
And everyone thought maybe it went down. It went to Russia, apparently. That's where he is. You said potentially Conspiracy Monday.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
So let's start off here. Thomas Massey says, it appears the deep state and the rebels they supported went into overdrive to overthrow Assad when Trump won the election, knowing Trump would end U.S. meddling in Syria. And then he showed his tweet from 2019 when Trump pulled back from Obama's dangerous policy of destabilizing Syria. This is one of the initial reactions I had as well, especially with him nominating Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. I feel like Trump winning the election, the CIA texts a bunch of their assets, and they're like, hey, we got to move this coup up. I know we've been practicing the coup for a bit. Mm-hmm. We thought we had a little bit more time, but we got to get this coup scheduled.
They implemented the contingency plan.
Yeah.
Because they've got contingency plans.
They do have contingency plans for sure.
Not NASA.
And so,
but the CIA definitely has contingency plans.
This is one good conspiracy, I think, is that Trump is coming in. He nominates someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who is best friends with Assad, as we know, best friends. And by best friends, I mean several years ago, she had a meeting with him.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all. That's all we got. She had a meeting, and
they probably slept together.
Yes. That she can try everything she wants. That's fine. All right. That's on her. Women have all the power in the world if they just use it.
I saw that in a movie once.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very possible. Now, I mean, people have said that Gabbard was, her pal Assad and all that. She basically tried to sit down and talk with him and see if Assad would be amenable to the idea of not being a brutal dictator and maybe having democratic elections and stuff like that. Okay, so she tried to meet with him because there was a very dangerous, terrible civil war brewing and going on in Syria, which, by the way, updated to 2024, estimates are a little over 600,000 people have died in this Syrian civil war. There are multiple factions that have been fighting against Assad and with Assad. You got Russia and Iran fighting with Assad. You got this group called HTS, which is led by a guy who used to be in Al-Qaeda and used to be in ISIS, who ended up ousting Assad. You've got a lot of different groups fighting in here, some armed by NATO, some armed by the Pentagon, some armed by the CIA.
And some armed by the FBI.
Yeah, so somehow the FBI also. And some of those groups fight each other also with our own weapons, okay? Yeah. That we have armed to try and take this guy out because this guy hurts his own civilians, okay? Allegedly with gas attacks and stuff like that. And so in an effort to remove this guy who has harmed some of his own civilians, we helped spark a civil war where over 600,000 people have died during the course of this civil war and created millions of refugees and destroyed the entire area because that guy's bad and hurts his people, which I don't agree with. Okay, I clearly don't agree with that at all. But it's not going to be all unicorns and rainbows right now, okay? But
as long as they get Assad out, kill everyone.
I guess so. And
that seems to be these people's goal. It's so crazy to me. It doesn't matter like how much damage is caused. for the goal.
Well, essentially what happened, this is what I think happens here is you have Assad who was loyal and controlled, backed by Russia and Iran. And the U.S. government doesn't like that. What it wants is it wants its own puppet. You don't like someone else being someone else's puppet. You want a guy to be your puppet. And so what they think they can do, the theory is, we could arm essentially Al-Qaeda, these terrorists, we can who we call the guy who could end up running Syria is wanted by the State Department, and there's a $10 million reward on his head, and we're celebrating that he overthrew Assad.
Yeah.
Okay? He's a wanted terrorist that we offer $10 million reward for. But
now relabeled, hero.
Peace. Yeah. He's a freedom fighter.
Yeah.
So what he is, he's a freedom fighter. And
Rebel.
so
He's just a rebel now.
what we think we can do, which is something that I've got this crazy idea that the United States government's going to try, okay? They're going to try to fund some of these different terrorist organizations and try to control them with money and weapons that we give to those different terrorist organizations. And they're going to overthrow the dictator who's loyal to Russia. And instead, we're going to have our own brutal dictator who's loyal to us. And nothing bad is they're always going to do what's best for U.S. national security interests afterwards.
Because those are people you can trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think let's just move Zelensky from Ukraine over to Syria.
yeah, it's kind of a lateral move for him, but you could consider it a promotion. I don't know.
Well, the oil production might be
Could
oil
be
and
good.
gas production might be a promotion.
Could be good. We could trade him. It'd be fine. The less conspiracy theory idea would be Russia has been helping Assad, and Russia is busy right now. They're busy in Ukraine. And maybe people thought that Trump wasn't going to win the election and we could keep this Russia-Ukraine thing running for a long time. But since Trump is coming in, the deep state fear is that Trump is going to help end the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which means Russia is going to have more time to bomb other places. They're busy right now. Where they're bombing, and so they got a little bit of time left before Trump negotiates an end to that war, where they could try and topple Assad while Russia's busy at the moment.
And if Trump does end these things, that's less money for the
no, you don't want to. Yeah, can't do that
for the war machine.
It's just generally good for the war machine to have as many crazy things going on as possible. So we got Thomas Massey throwing out the deep state. Donald Trump, to his credit, said a couple good things, especially at the end of this. Charlie, go ahead.
All right. He said opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, had totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive and are now on the outskirts of Damascus.
This is before they finish their thing.
Obviously preparing to make a very big move toward taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine and with the loss there of over 600,000 soldiers, seems incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where former President Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, and that all hell broke out with Russia stepping in. But now they are, like possibly Assad himself, being forced out, and it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia other than to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but it is not. Well, that's what Gary Johnson said.
It is a mess. Yeah, they agree.
Wow.
See, libertarianism taking over.
But it is not our friend, and the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. The problem is the U.S. is already involved.
Yeah, they're literally involved. I would. It's not that I think. Yeah, I was talking to Amanda yesterday, and it kind of reached a point where I was essentially saying the U.S. is like the center of the universe when it comes to all the actions that happen over here. But I do sort of feel like the CIA and all these departments have their tentacles in everything. And so, yeah, I do think they're involved. In fact, we are already, we still have 900 troops in Syria, by the way. Those ones that Trump tried to pull out. And then
We have more than that.
Those are official troops, and then you got the contractors too.
We have thousands of assets in Syria,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
And so, let's see, what was I saying just then? Oh, we're definitely involved. We're already going to help with some bombing, according to Biden, because one of the fears here is that there's ISIS in Syria, and they might want to try to step in now. And of course, now you could have ISIS fighting Al Qaeda and these other people. It's like a Syrian civil war where a whole bunch of people are fighting and dying. And so this might not be settled yet. And so what's happening is we're going to try and stop ISIS from stepping in and taking over Syria. So the guy that we have a $10 million bounty on can take over Syria instead. It's much better for everyone.
I did see Biden talk about there were some strategic drone bombings that he authorized. Perfect.
Yeah.
This is all great.
It's all really good
This
stuff.
is just, in the last few months before Trump takes over, this is all just...
Isn't it weird how that
perfection.
happens? Like you got a guy coming in who wants to end some wars and stuff, and stuff just kind of hits the fan right beforehand.
It's crazy.
It's always.
I
So
do
crazy
like how
that
Trump said the
happens.
United States should have nothing to do with it. Like,
Yeah, that's good.
let's just let them... That's their country. Let them play it out.
But unfortunately, Israel is already trying to hit some targets there because they do share a border with Syria, and they don't want the wrong people taking power there either. If it ends up Israel gets involved with anyone who's also launching rockets from Syria and stuff, well, guess what? Israel is essentially a giant U.S. military installation in the middle of the Middle East, and we will be involved in that. We will be funding it. And this could just make things get even crazier there. So while he says he does not want to get involved, if anyone from Syria ends up threatening or showing any harm towards Israel, well, guess what? We're going to be involved. And that's because while Trump wants to be anti-war, we do have a lot of pro-Israel, extremely pro-Israel. Listen, I'm not anti-Israel, but there's some like extremely hawkish pro-Israel people that are involved in this new administration. So we'll see. I think we're going to move on to, I brought in a bunch of stuff about Jelani and who could eventually end up running Syria. And it's not good. The answer is it's not good. And right now we're in the period of time of we don't know. And as I said when we first started, we have been in this period of time with several countries over our lifetime. Yeah. And typically when the brutal dictator that no one likes gets overthrown, it's not great afterwards. It ends up being a lot worse. And that's not me supporting brutal, terrible dictators that no one likes. But sometimes it's better. None of this stuff gets fixed until the people in these countries decide that they want freedom and liberty, and they decide to fight their own little war for freedom and liberty. But I don't think that I don't think that's on anyone's radar. Like, I don't think that's
the problem. Is
that's
it's
not
tough
going to happen.
It's tough for trees to grow out there, in the desert.
It's very tough. Yeah.
So
it's very difficult.
Not very many liberty trees being planted.
No.
It's hard for them to survive.
They've been trying to water them with the blood of tyrants and tyrants, and it just doesn't work.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The suspect in the assassination of the chief executive of United Healthcare will fight extradition to New York to face murder charges. Luigi Mangione has been denied bail and will remain in custody in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The Israeli military has confirmed it destroyed Syrian naval facilities overnight and that it's conducted more than 350 airstrikes in the past 48 hours on military assets belonging to the Assad regime. This despite warnings that it could ignite new conflict and jeopardize the transition of power to an interim government in the country. Israel has characterized its operations as defensive, saying it was striking suspected chemical weapons stockpiles to prevent them from falling into the hands of extremists. Rebels have named Syria's new interim prime minister as Mohammed al-Bashir, who previously governed a small pocket of rebel-held territory. Meanwhile, the United States has filed war crimes charges against two high-ranking Syrian military figures who it accuses of torturing American citizens. It comes after the government of Bashar al-Assad collapsed, with the former president fleeing the country. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US Justice Department says Jamil Hassan and Abdul Salam Mahmoud, both former Syrian Air Force intelligence officers, are responsible for what they're calling the infliction of cruel and inhuman treatment on detainees. Among those detainees, US citizens. The two men allegedly ordered torture, including whipping, beating, burning and electrocuting prisoners. The indictment was filed last month, but only unsealed with the fall of the Syrian government. Washington has issued arrest warrants. However, prosecutors say the pair remain at large, with their exact location seemingly unknown.
Firefighters continue to battle a fast-moving wildfire in the California city of Malibu, and thousands of people remain under evacuation orders. Some students at a local university were forced to shelter overnight in the school's library. Ira Spitzer reports from California.
The Franklin Fire erupted overnight in Malibu, fueled by powerful dry winds blowing from the mountains toward the Southern California coast. Residents reported seeing the hillside covered in flames, and the fire crossed the Pacific Coast Highway with wind gusts of close to 100 kilometers an hour. At Pepperdine University, several hundred students sheltered in place in the school's library overnight. Malibu has opened other evacuation sites, with power shut down across parts of the coastal city of 10,000 people. The National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning indicating a particularly dangerous situation for parts of Los Angeles and Ventura counties through at least Tuesday afternoon.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
The dude, Luigi Mangione, was arrested in Pennsylvania. He is allegedly the guy who killed the United Healthcare CEO. Charlie says he's not the guy. Why?
There's just no way. This isn't the guy.
Why is he not the guy?
First of all, the eyebrows don't match.
The eyebrows are pretty close.
They don't match.
I think they're pretty close.
I don't think so.
I've seen a lot of conspiracies about it not being the guy. So the thing with the conspiracy is normally there has to be some type of incentive, like something to gain. And I don't understand what that is yet. And so I don't understand coming up with a conspiracy about why it wouldn't be the guy when you don't have a reason why it wouldn't be the guy.
Because what's the motivation for him being the guy?
Well, he hadn't posted anything since June. These are claims about this guy, whether or not he's the shooter. This is what's happened in this guy's life. He had a major surgery, screws in his back, having a tough time with that, drops off the map. No one has heard from him since around June, the last time that he posted on social media. Family couldn't contact him. Friends couldn't find him. Nothing like that. And then he resurfaces and kills a health insurance CEO. As far as the theory goes right now, I don't see why it couldn't be the guy. I get that it's odd to find a dude, change his clothes and stuff. He goes into Central Park, he changes clothes, apparently changes backpacks. But like in his backpack that they, find him with, he's got a ghost gun with a suppressor and a manifesto, which is perfect. Perfect. He's got his McLovin ID. And so you got seemingly everything on the guy that you would need to convict him.
To say he's the guy, yeah.
They also allegedly found $8,000 on him in cash or something like that. And that is the only, when he went to court, he went before the judge, that's the only thing that he disputed. He's like, I didn't have cash on me. They had to have planted that on me. But that's it. He didn't say, that gun's not mine. All he said was, I don't know anything about the cash. But I don't know why he would deny that, but not the other stuff.
Did he just not say anything about the other stuff?
I guess not. I mean, they presented all this stuff in court yesterday, and the only thing that he had an issue with was he said that the cash wasn't his. That's it.
But if he sows a seed of doubt about them planting cash,
then
they could plant.
What else did they plant?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But why? I'm just asking. What normally a conspiracy theory has a good why. Why would they do this? So what's your why? What is it?
Well, that way they could dismantle the healthcare system, into government.
Why? But why wouldn't this guy want to do it?
They could ban ghost guns, 3D printing. Obviously this guy had a ghost gun and a ghost suppressor.
Good for him having a ghost gun. I think we should all have one.
So
maybe we do.
They're going to ban those because obviously this led to a high profile killing.
Yeah.
If it wouldn't have been for 3D printers,
it wouldn't happen.
Brian Thompson would still be alive.
I don't think this guy would have had an issue getting a gun. He was a person of means. According, so he worked as a data engineer at the car buying website TrueCar. Graduated from UPenn in 2020. He received a Master of Science in Engineering with a major in Computer and Information Science, a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, major in Computer Science with a minor in Mathematics. He worked as a teaching assistant and founded a video game development club, according to his LinkedIn account. At Stanford University in California, Mangione was a head counselor for pre-collegiate students program during the summer of 2019. Ties to Honolulu. His last known address was in Honolulu, according to an Instagram video. He's related to a prominent Maryland family. He was born and raised in Maryland. He is related to a prominent Maryland family and owns country clubs.
The family owns country clubs, healthcare facilities, and real estate companies.
So he's just a rich kid who hates his dad. That's just really all it is. His dad probably looked up to this Brian Thompson guy, and so he wanted to take out his dad's hero. I just don't see I don't understand the conspiracy theory here.
He was valedictorian. He captained the Gilman robotics team. But
there's nothing saying this guy wouldn't have some kind of bad medical problem and decide he wants to take out a healthcare CEO.
You're telling me you don't see the conspiracy theory?
No, I don't see this one. And I love a good conspiracy theory. I just don't get it.
What is his motive for taking out a healthcare CEO? What's the motive? This guy had everything going for him.
He probably had some kind of bad healthcare thing happen, and decided he was going to do something to solve the problem. I don't know. We'll see what his manifesto says. If it's a real and
they
also
won't release it.
So what are we going to do if he admits to all of it? He didn't deny the gun being his or anything else being his in court.
Does the gun match?
So how far does the conspiracy theory goes? He admits to it, but that's because they're threatening to hurt his family or something like that, But why?
Yeah.
Why can't this just be the guy?
I can't see how you're just going along with it.
Hey, he's innocent until proven guilty. Now I'll go along with that, but I'm just saying I don't see the grand makings of a conspiracy here yet. It's just not coming together for me. But if I see some kind of evidence or whatever, that's fine. I want to talk a little bit about the healthcare stuff, of course. So we're going to start with this Taylor Lorenz being on Piers Morgan. By the way, I did see that I think she got let go from her whatever publication, Vox something, that she was working for because of all the crazy stuff she's been saying. But here's a little clip from her.
I do believe in the sanctity of life, and I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean...
Joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Of Americans that he murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
But why not?
And,
why are you laughing?
I think because it wouldn't fit.
I love Pierce. He does a good job,
Most of the time.
I like people who, but he's good at, I don't have that where I can put myself in an uncomfortable, awkward situation in that kind of conversation. Like, I don't have that quality right there. I get uncomfortable watching other people in that situation. And that's one of the reasons I just hit pause right then. So here's the thing. These greedy health insurance CEOs. Yeah, we know that. We talked about that. By the way, it's about the biggest episode we've had this year. Was our talk about healthcare last week. So maybe we ought to lean into that a little bit, because that seems to be our specialty in the first place. And so this is kind of funny. Like, we leaned into where our actual expertise lies, and it ends up being, I think, about our biggest episode of the year so far. So I wanted to bring up a couple things I've seen Ro Khanna say. Now, this is probably going to go for a dumb bleep of the week submission here, but I saw him post this yesterday, and he said last year the 7 largest private health insurers collected $1.39 trillion in profit. It's absurd that big insurance is raking in trillions while Americans are pinching pennies to afford treatment. We need Medicare for all now.
There you go. We need Medicare for all now.
Yeah. Then you might see that there's a proposed community note. Of course, after this gets 4.4 thousand retweets or reposts, and the fact that he confused revenue with profit. And so when I saw that number, I was like, 1.39 trillion in profit. Well, that's an awful lot of profit for this industry to be making. And so instead of deleting the tweet, he just tweets a little addendum to below it here and says, correction, the largest U.S. health insurance companies have 1.4 trillion in revenue and 70.7 billion in profit last year, which, just in case you guys don't have a calculator handy, I did the math, that equates to 5% net profit for that industry. And so I said, so 5% net profit is the root cause of our problems. So that's first off.
Well, no one deserves $1 billion.
Yeah. So many people think that the reason healthcare is so expensive is because these greedy health insurance CEOs are raking in tons of profit. Now, the net profit that they make is about 5% out of the amount of money that they take in. Okay. If you were to reduce the cost for everyone by 5%, hardly anyone would even notice it, and they would still be upset about how expensive everything is. So it's not the profit that the companies are making. A lot of times when you say, well, they make this profit, is that the cause of our problems? They'll do something like, well, these people get paid a bunch of money. These CEOs get paid a bunch of money. We'll talk about that here in a second. Ro Khanna had another stupid idea the other day. I kind of brought this up yesterday, I think. He said, who supports a simple law requiring insurance companies to pay for medicines or treatment prescribed by a doctor? Something we could do now while we fight for Medicare for all. Now, what he means is an issue that people have decided they have is with the denials of claims. Okay. And you can talk about how maybe some people have died because of the claim denials. The number they give you, the 68,000 that die every year through lack of health insurance, that's not just claims that were denied. They didn't. Not all of those came from people who had insurance and all their claims were denied, by the way. That's just the number that has been estimated could have been saved if everyone had perfect medical treatment every single year. Which, by the way, even if you saved all those people, there would then be another group of people who could have been saved if we had still a more perfect medical system that they would all have. And so the answer that they have is that everyone should get everything provided to them at all times.
Yes.
So, but the claims denial conversation, I think, deserves this idea right here, because let's talk about what if they don't deny claims. Because his idea is, what if there was a law passed that they had to cover every claim that was made, anything that a doctor said needed to be done, they had to pay for it.
Well, there would be no insurance companies.
Well, no.
That's what would happen.
The economic question there is, okay, well then what's the incentive for the doctors in that scenario? The providers. Let's just say the providers. Because guess what? Those are also ran by human beings who get paid for their work, make money, drive nice cars, have nice houses. What's their incentive in a world where it is illegal for an insurance company to ever deny anything that they say needs to be done?
This happens all the time, by the way. I mean, I know people who have worked in dentist offices who would tell the patients they needed a retainer regardless of whether they needed a retainer or not.
Yeah.
And that's because they could get insurance to pay $500 for it. So you're looking at $500 per person. And basically most people would be like, oh, okay.
So you're talking about setting up an environment where any doctor who wants to make any amount of money can suggest any number of treatments for anyone, and it would be illegal for the health insurance company to say that it wasn't necessary. So like this conversation brings up the fact that there does need to be a negotiation here. There has to be someone who questions whether or not the thing is medically necessary, because doctors and providers and whoever else it is also have an incentive to charge as much money and do as many procedures as they possibly can so they can make as much money as possible, because they're also human beings. And so the insurance company, because we have a third-party payer system, guess what they do? They have a system where they scrutinize and question all of the claims, all of those procedures, all of that, because if they didn't, what's the limiting factor on what other human beings would say they have to pay for?
I will say sometimes it does get a little out of hand.
Well, sure it does. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that idea itself. Someone does have to look at it and question,
but it still
whether or not it's necessary.
We wouldn't even be talking about this though if healthcare wasn't so expensive.
I know.
There wouldn't nobody would be scrutinizing whether something was medically necessary.
Well, you still would need to, or it would just get out of hand again.
But it wouldn't get out of hand. What are you going to do? Order 1,000 $4 tests?
You might. Yeah.
No, you're not. There's no way to. There wouldn't be. You wouldn't be able to make a massive amount of money because you couldn't. It would be so simple. There'd be no way to justify, 1,000 $4 tests. Let's say, something that should cost a mediocre amount of money. There would be no incentive for anybody to go in and scrutinize anything because it would be such a minuscule amount of money. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
It still doesn't get to the root cause of the problem, which is that healthcare is too expensive. And there's reasons that it's too expensive.
Yeah. He adds on
because
something.
Then what I'm saying is like most healthcare should be very inexpensive. And then like your major things that happen should cost obviously a lot of money. Let's say a heart transplant or something. And then it's pretty easy to prove medical necessity when it comes to something like that.
Yeah.
Doctors aren't just going to be handing out heart transplants willy-nilly. Like Oprah. You get a heart transplant. You do. So to me, if you solve the pricing problem, and I'm not saying you solve all of it, but largely you would solve this problem, the medical necessity. I mean, God, dude, each side, providers and insurers, they have teams of people, physicians arguing back and forth on what is medically necessary.
Yeah.
That's just one form of denial. There's all kinds of denial.
You got like claim denial nurses who, people who work there who are medically trained professionals,
physicians
who go through everything and scrutinize everything. Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying is, in the system we have right now with insurance, even if we had a perfect healthcare system, you would still have an insurance company that would need to scrutinize and make sure that things are actually medically necessary to happen, because they're the ones that are paying for it. And if they didn't do that, then the doctors could just charge whatever they wanted and however many amount of times. And Ro Khanna realizes that if you did this, clearly they would just increase their premiums by a bunch of money if they were forced to pay for everything and they were never able to question it. And so he says, well, they would have to ensure that there would be no premium hikes.
Yeah.
So he wants to force them to pay for everything, no questions asked. Why would you question that? Doctors are good people. They are good, noble people. Okay.
Most are.
So you can't question it. And so you also have to set a limit where they can't hike their premiums. So he's essentially like, I know Obamacare didn't fully finish off the health insurance industry, but I have an idea of how to do it. And we're going to go ahead and destroy them completely, make sure they just go out of business. It's totally ridiculous. What I'm trying to get down to is people seem to think, well, they deny claims and that's bad. It is true that there are some claims that they deny that probably are bad, and they probably just try to do that to try and save a buck. But there's also claims that get denied that are good, and also that system, that idea that they should scrutinize what people are asking them to pay for is a good idea that makes sense and has to exist in the health insurance industry. And so you can't just attack that idea on its face and say they shouldn't be able to ever scrutinize anything. That's ridiculous, just so you know. Basic economics would tell you that that's ridiculous. The other thing here, because when you bring up the profits, I'm like, oh, it's 5% net profit margin. That's like nothing. Well, here's what really adds to it, is these health insurance CEOs and their compensation. That's where the real cost is coming from. And so you add up all of these, 21 million, 23.5 million. Brian Thompson is at the bottom of the list, by the way. Jeez. At 10.2 million. And you add all that up, it adds up to about $160 million. And so, yeah, you take that out of 1.4 trillion, and you've made a big dent in it. Let me tell you what. Guess what? If you take that out of the profits, it's still 5%. It's not even enough to move it off of 5%. Okay, it's not enough money to move it off of that. Or you could just pay all of them $0. Like, this is how ridiculous the idea of CEO compensation. It just boils down to people are mad that some people make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. Yeah. They just hate people that are rich. And they hate capitalism.
Well, you see someone making 21 million and you're only making, 40 grand.
Yeah.
You're like, you get mad. God.
You get mad about it. But then you can get mad about that, I guess, if you want. You could say it's immoral or whatever, but you cannot make the argument that it affects the price of the service that you're paying for and that it's a reason that it's so expensive, because the math does not math on that. You take 160 million. And by the way, if there's 160 million people in America that have a health insurance plan, it's more than that, probably. I don't know what let's say it's 160 million.
You each get $1.
You each get $1
for the year.
Everyone reduces their yearly premium by $1 if you don't pay these people anything, and that is how much their compensation works into the price of your premium that you pay every year. So don't make the argument that it affects the price whatsoever. You can say that it's immoral or something like that. You'd be wrong. You could say that it's immoral, but you can't say it affects the price. And by the way, the reason I say it's not immoral is that it's important to have people who are good at business, running businesses that are very important. The difference in paying for a CEO that is $1 million a year or $300,000 a year, a number that people won't get mad at, I guess, versus a CEO that's $25 million a year, could be $50 billion. It could be running the company into the ground and all of those people losing their health insurance. Mm-hmm. And you pay $20 million to ensure that $50 billion worth of, well, I mean, it's going to be way more than $50 billion, but whatever, that all those people are able to get health insurance, essentially, and not lose another one of the competitors and consolidate this market even more. I just hate bad arguments when it comes to this stuff. That's my biggest thing.
I agree.
Like, make a decent argument. Someone, please. A new Gallup survey found that 62% of Americans say it's the federal government's responsibility to ensure everyone has health care coverage.
Jesus.
Well, I want to let all of those percent of people know right now that you're living in it right now. So don't you be complaining about what we currently have. This right now, the situation we're talking about is
because of the government
guarantee, making sure that all Americans have health care coverage. That is what we live in right now. The ACA, Obamacare, has completely ruined the health insurance industry, made it so expensive. They've taken away most of the ways an insurance company can be profitable, which is by creating very cleverly devised risk pools of people and having people who don't need to use it pay into it throughout the year. So the lower amount of people who do use it are paid for by the others. This is the way insurance works. It's like a voluntary social welfare program almost, but you have to devise those risk pools in a very specific way. And the government took it and turned it into what a government welfare program would look like instead of a capitalist welfare program, what that would look like. And what happens when you first increase the demand and then you restrict all the supply, you get shortages. But you can't have shortages in the market where they are required to give you the coverage. So they have shortages popping up in other ways. The shortage is called claim denials. This is basic economics. The government has created a shortage, but they are required to tell the person that they have health insurance. So you give the person a piece of paper that says you have health insurance. So there's no shortage right there.
Then on the back end,
the shortage occurs when they try to deny you the service that they were legally obligated to give you, even though they probably didn't want to give it to you in the first place. That's where the shortage happens. And that is what we're living in right now. That's why we could say that they denied some claims for people that paid them, and that's a shady thing to do. But also, this is the government's fault that this is.
By the way,
occurring
that's
right
a great
now in the first
analogy.
place.
That's a great analogy because the same thing happened during the housing crash.
Yeah.
Right? There was a shortage.
They give you a house.
Yes. But it happened on the back end when you got evicted.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, when you got foreclosed on.
Exactly.
And that's because the government forced banks to lend you money that they wouldn't otherwise have qualified you for.
You got kicked out of the house. And you didn't really get the house.
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy.
Does this ever happen to you? Moments after you're introduced to someone, you forget his or her name. It's a common faux pas you'll want to avoid, especially if you're a job seeker. And even if you're not, here's a tip. As you are being introduced, and while you're still shaking hands, smiling, and making eye contact, say the person's name aloud. Not only does that make a deposit in your memory bank, it acknowledges the other person. And that is more than a nuance, as is maintaining eye contact. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. Cutting through the clutter rather than blending into the blah, blah, blah will help you connect better no matter what the conversation. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. Government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news, here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The suspect in the assassination of the chief executive of United Healthcare will fight extradition to New York to face murder charges. Luigi Mangione has been denied bail and will remain in custody in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The Israeli military has confirmed it destroyed Syrian naval facilities overnight and that it's conducted more than 350 airstrikes in the past 48 hours on military assets belonging to the Assad regime. This despite warnings that it could ignite new conflict and jeopardize the transition of power to an interim government in the country. Israel has characterized its operations as defensive, saying it was striking suspected chemical weapons stockpiles to prevent them from falling into the hands of extremists. Rebels have named Syria's new interim prime minister as Mohammed al-Bashir, who previously governed a small pocket of rebel-held territory. Meanwhile, the United States has filed war crimes charges against two high-ranking Syrian military figures who it accuses of torturing American citizens. It comes after the government of Bashar al-Assad collapsed, with the former president fleeing the country. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US Justice Department says Jamil Hassan and Abdul Salam Mahmoud, both former Syrian Air Force intelligence officers, are responsible for what they're calling the infliction of cruel and inhuman treatment on detainees. Among those detainees, US citizens. The two men allegedly ordered torture, including whipping, beating, burning and electrocuting prisoners. The indictment was filed last month, but only unsealed with the fall of the Syrian government. Washington has issued arrest warrants. However, prosecutors say the pair remain at large, with their exact location seemingly unknown.
Firefighters continue to battle a fast-moving wildfire in the California city of Malibu, and thousands of people remain under evacuation orders. Some students at a local university were forced to shelter overnight in the school's library. Ira Spitzer reports from California.
The Franklin fire erupted overnight in Malibu, fueled by powerful dry winds blowing from the mountains toward the Southern California coast. Residents reported seeing the hillside covered in flames, and the fire crossed the Pacific Coast Highway with wind gusts of close to 100 kilometers an hour. At Pepperdine University, several hundred students sheltered in place in the school's library overnight. Malibu has opened other evacuation sites, with power shut down across parts of the coastal city of 10,000 people. The National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning indicating a particularly dangerous situation for parts of Los Angeles and Ventura counties through at least Tuesday afternoon.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the joy in Syria over Bashar al-Assad's ouster from power and his flight to asylum in Russia gives way to horror as efforts continue to find those people whose lives he upended during his 24 years in power. It is hard, given some of the images the world has witnessed from Syria since the weekend, to remember that when Assad first ascended to the Syrian leadership, he was considered a reformer, a man who could modernize his country after the brutality of his own father, Hafez al-Assad, who ruled Syria for nearly 3 decades. But Emma Beals, a non-resident fellow at the Middle East Institute and senior advisor at the European Institute of Peace, says now the last couple of days have put paid to any illusions about the nature of Bashar's own regime.
The flip side of yesterday's joy is just utter sadness and tragedy as the full scale of what a butcher Assad was comes to light. And some of us knew that. We've been following in a lot of detail for many years, researching, these gulags and what was happening in them. But, watching them desperately try to get people out of Sednaya and the underground basements there, the secret prisons, just the scale of horror has just been astonishing.
Tomorrow, what to expect from Syria's rebel leader, now with his fingers on the levers of power in Damascus. He says he wants to unify the country and has put his jihadist past behind him. But can he be trusted? With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The suspect in the assassination of the chief executive of United Healthcare will fight extradition to New York to face murder charges. The Israeli military's confirmed it destroyed Syrian naval facilities overnight. And the US has filed war crimes charges against 2 high-ranking Syrian military figures who it accuses of torturing American citizens. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Sony released this week the Nasal HD 340s, a brand new pair of high-quality nose buds designed to let users blast different scents into their nostrils throughout the day. The Onion let consumers across the nation sound off about their excitement for the new product.
I've always got them in my nose. At work, at the gym, on the bus, wherever. These days, I can't stop smelling tennis ball.
Retailing for $49.99, the nose buds accompany the launch of Sony's new online odor store, which sells over 22,000 different smells for download and immediate inhalation. Still, not everyone is quite as enthusiastic about the new product.
These things suck. I mean, a lot of times it only works out of the right nostril. The other day I tried smelling picnic table. It smelled more like hardwood floor. And also, to be honest, I have a really hard time breathing with these things on.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. This is Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network. Let's talk about the murder of that healthcare CEO and the problems with our system. The common thing to say is we don't condone this, but maybe people should pay attention to why this happened.
There's no empathy for this guy at all.
No, there's not. Even among some people in our own group right here, which means we haven't done a good enough job. I see talking about things like this lately.
I've seen a few people that are like, wow, this comment section's wild.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, but man, this guy, like a life was lost here.
That's true. And he had a couple kids, a wife, stuff like that. But then the response from people as well, so did the people who died, because he denied people's claims and they died from whatever these conditions were. That is a very surface level, simple order way of thinking about the healthcare system in the United States. You pay the health insurance companies and sometimes they deny claims. And if that's the person that you get mad at and you think is the cause of the healthcare problems in the United States, then you haven't spent enough time thinking about the problem. We don't operate in a free market healthcare system in the United States. And if we had a free market healthcare system in the United States, people like this would probably go out of business because other people would come in and do a better job. We could probably talk this entire show about reasons that claims are denied and percentages of claims that get denied, and the fact that only
we can talk about how bad payers are in the market.
Yeah, I think 0.2% of people appeal those denials. The rest of them just either let it go into debt or they pay it, or they just stop going to the doctor or whatever. Actually, a very large percentage of the time that people do appeal, they'll pay it. But a very low percentage of people will get on the phone.
Now, let me go on a rant about payers, because I can empathize with the people who have a lot of apathy right now, and I get it. Now, violence is never the answer. I don't agree with that. What I can do is I can empathize and understand from a personal perspective or a provider perspective on how difficult payers are in this system. Now, you have to understand that the reason, actually one of the largest reasons more recently of why the payers have the ability to do what they do when it comes to denying claims and making it nearly impossible to submit information correctly or whatever, is that the payers largely wrote the Affordable Care Act, which organizes a lot of this stuff. But it all goes back to Medicare and Medicaid. Okay. And when the government first entered the healthcare realm, you have to understand that when the government is to be responsible to delineate federal taxpayer money, they had to come up with a system that they could show they would be efficient with. Now, of course, we know it's not efficient, but what they did is they take cases from all over the United States, data, they analyze that data and they say, okay, we had 20,000 heart transplants, and this is the average amount of time that it took, and this is the average amount of medications that were administered, and this is how long they stayed in the hospital.
Length of stay, yeah.
So what they do, and then they create a code for that. And they say, like, okay, we're going to pay you this much based on this code because this is what the average cost is for, all these people who had heart transplants. And so the problem is, here's the problem with that kind of thinking, is that human beings are so unique that it can't be a one-size-fits-all system. Now, of course, they allow you to add some modifiers, and you can add some different procedure codes or whatever, different diagnosis that comes in there. You can add some comorbidities, complexities or super complexities. That's not what they're called technically, but modified complexities, MCCs, CCs. So there are ways in which you can go around it, but it still doesn't address the problem that each situation is unique and should be considered in that uniqueness, but it's not. And when Medicare and Medicaid develop this system that everybody has to go off of, well, now all of the payers do the same thing. They have their own codes, actually. And I know several people that are working directly with United and Blue Cross and some of your major players to try to figure out what are your different criterias. Payers have providers that work for them that consult and say, hey, here's what we expect and here's why we're denying claims. Providers have providers that work for them that write appeal letters. And this entire industry, multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, is all due to the fact that we have a convoluted anti-free market healthcare system. Mm-hmm. And the constant battle is trying to navigate how we actually provide products and services and then get paid for them from the provider side. And then insurance is still insurance. They're trying to pay as little as possible for their consumers, just like your car insurance or your house insurance does, because that would be a terrible business model for them to pay out way more than they ever receive. Yeah. They would go out of business. So, of course, they're trying to optimize the amount they pay out in claims versus the amount that they receive. And the idea behind it, especially with everybody mostly having group policy now, is that you're basically sharing the risk among the population. So one person like Nate, who's been a doctor way more than I have, if we were in a group policy together, I'm helping cover the cost of Nate's care. Now, that system can work, as we see that it works decently in other industries like car insurance or health insurance or home insurance or any business insurance, like whatever insurance you get. If we had a true free market system, a lot of these problems, including the assassination of a CEO of a insurance payer, we wouldn't see those problems because most people would have what would be considered a catastrophic plan, because healthcare would be affordable enough to where I wouldn't need to have coverage to pay for routine things, routine surgeries, those types of things. It would only be if something really bad happened, like cancer, or I needed a transplant, or whatever the case may be. And then if enough people had that coverage, you could share that risk and share that cost, and it's more cost effective.
Just
for
can't
people.
Get the catastrophic plan anymore, and that's one of the main problems. And one of the things Charlie's alluding to here is that we way overuse insurance. We use insurance, which the absolute best way to describe insurance was done by a fella by the name of Chris Rock, and he did a bit where he called insurance in case, and that's what it was. It was in case it happened. That's what insurance is for.
You're trying to buy security.
And right now we have a system because of the government. You can go all the way back to,
or you can consider
FDR froze wages. People started offering employer-based health insurance. They let them buy it with pre-tax dollars so they could get a better deal on the insurance. Their dollars went further buying the insurance than people after tax dollars. And so employers were incentivized to buy these insurance plans for their workers. That led to way more people having insurance, which eventually led to people using insurance for an annual doctor's visit that everyone knows is going to happen next year. There are so many problems that have been caused by the government in the healthcare industry, and one of the major ones is Medicare coming in. What happens when the government taxes away a bunch of money from millions of people and says, oh, hey, healthcare providers, we're going to be a payer now on things.
For the population that needs healthcare the most.
Yes, the sickest part of our population.
With old
so
people.
What's going to happen? They pay for things like the government pays for things. And in that entire industry, the prices in that industry keep going up, not even including all the regulations that they throw on top of everything inside of the industry. I mean, to unravel the whole problem with the cost of healthcare in the U.S. would take more than one episode, more than today's episode, for sure. There are some good books on it that I've read that I will recommend. A really good one called The Primal Prescription that everyone should go listen to. But what I said at the beginning of this being like single order thinking, one level thinking, to boil that down to this greedy health insurance CEO is the problem with why we can't afford things in the United States, with why our healthcare is expensive. It's simplistic, doesn't even cover how simplistic that line of thinking is. United Healthcare, I mean, people literally talk about these people, oh, they pocket billions. They make billions off of people being sick. They're making all this money, these greedy capitalist guys. The people cheering this on, it's the same Marxist ideology that we argue against with everything. It is no different, okay? Healthcare is a commodity. Just like food. If you don't get food, you'll die. Every single human being in the United States requires food to stay alive. That is a fact. But when we talk about people raising prices on food, we're like, oh, quit complaining, you dumb lib. You know, it's a free market. Price got to go up, supply and demand, stuff like that. But when it comes to healthcare coverage, like, well, if this person can't get this thing, they're going to die. Well, guess what? Food, that goes for every single human being in the United States. And somehow we got a problem with obesity. We got new drugs provided by the healthcare industry that help people slim down because we got so much food.
Yeah.
But then we say that somehow capitalism and profit-seeking entities are the issue when health insurance is one of the lowest profit margin industries. For people who make profit.
Healthcare in general.
Yeah, healthcare in general, but health insurance specifically. Because people who own hospitals like HCA and people who make medications like Pfizer, they make way more money than the health insurance companies do as a percentage. In fact, United Healthcare, so far in 2024, what do you guys think? Get a number in your head real quick. 3.8% net profit margin is where they're at right now. Okay, guys, let's knock off that. Let's cut 3.8% from the cost of everyone's premiums. All right, now no one's going to bitch anymore, are they?
Yeah.
No, this is not the problem at all. The problem is that we use third-party payers to pay for almost everything in the U.S. And when you pull together the resources and the money from hundreds of millions of people and then say, well, I've got this pot of money, I can pay for this, you're willing to pay a lot more money for it. That's what happens, as opposed to someone who says, I'm going to pay out of pocket for this problem. Whatever this problem is, I'm going to pay out of pocket. Now you have to price things based off of what normal people can afford to pay for things. We don't do that anymore in the U.S.
What's interesting on top of that, I will say, is regular human beings' prioritization. We saw during the pandemic that people were willing to spend $50,000 to $100,000 on a vehicle and have $1,200 to $1,500 a month car payments. And that's no problem. They're getting a car that makes their life easier. However, if they need to visit a doctor or have some kind of minor surgery so that they don't die, death, to prevent death, no longer being here. It doesn't matter if you have a car or not. You're dying. Well, I don't have the $50,000 and someone else should pay for it.
It's more expensive than what it should be. We all agree with that. It could be a lot cheaper if the government wasn't ruining it and if we weren't all using third-party payers to pay for everything all the time. But that is a big thing that we've harped on over the years, is that people need to ask themselves what the value of not dying is. I realized this after I complained about paying $2,000 out of pocket for my appendectomy, which if I wouldn't have gotten, I would have died. And I complained about paying $2,000 out of pocket.
Not to die.
After the insurance company, by the way, paid about $40-something thousand,
which is way too much.
That's a pretty good deal. Now, that's not fixing the problem we're talking about today, or this conversation about, well, a guy had it coming, he denied a lot of claims.
And this is not to say there aren't problems in the system. One of the things that we did at Politicon is when we had a bunch of Bernie bros come up, we agreed with them that there's major issues in the healthcare system. The problem is that we disagree on the solutions, and we disagree on what's causing some of those problems. Now, is there greed at play? Well, sure.
Of course there is.
But it's always the other fellow who's greedy, not me, right?
No, but
I don't want to not die for the cheapest amount possible, right? Is that greedy to not want to die? It is greed. It's greedy to not want to die for the cheapest price possible.
Well, hey, by the way, I'm not trying to say this guy maybe wasn't a POS greedy guy who denied a bunch of people who they knew they should have been covering, and they tried to deny it anyway so they could not pay it out and save whatever amount of money that was. I'm not making that claim whatsoever. They probably denied a bunch of people who shouldn't have been denied. They probably reworked their terms of service or whatever it is that they call it in order to confuse some providers and create a bunch more denials in order to save money. Absolutely they did. The difference here is that this is healthcare, and it's directly related to whether or not people are going to die. And so that's where people get extra upset about it, even though there's plenty of other things, food, shelter, water, stuff like that, that are also related to whether or not people would die if they didn't have them. The fix for that, what is the fix for that? Because everyone's greedy. The problem is people single out certain individuals and say, well, that person's greedy. I'm not greedy. People who work in the government are greedy. There's no way anyone who works at CMS or HHS or any .gov agency are greedy. They're all public servants who get paid, but they're servants also. We call them that. I don't know why. And they're not greedy. It's just these people who are profit seeking getting 3.8%. After all those claim denials, all the denials they decided not to pay, they get 3.8% afterwards. Pfizer, during the pandemic, got 31% net profit margin, and none of these class war lefties were out there complaining about Pfizer getting 30% profit margins, mostly for money coming from the government. Yeah, before the big switch happened, when people on the left cared about big pharma and stuff like that.
Yeah,
weren't mad about that.
Now, here's some pushback I want to present to you. For this is coming from the Fed Haters Club here. Clark says, you pay premiums every single month. You're getting a service you paid for. There's no empathy. What he's saying here is like, well, I'm paying for a service. How can you deny it? I'm paying you every single month. You're deducting it from my check, or I'm sending you a check, whatever.
I get that.
Here's the I can address this. The problem is that you didn't read the fine print. well, and it's true. And here's the problem with that is there's not enough competition.
That's where I'm getting.
So it still boils down to the fact that we don't have a free market healthcare system. As Nate alluded to at the beginning of the show, is that if we had a free market healthcare system, United would go out of business because there would be much better.
Why would you pick United, who apparently denies 32% of their claims, which I'll tell you about the way they separate this out, but 32% of their claims, when you just go to someone else who denies 3% of their claims? Why would you pick United? Why would you?
Because most of the time you have to.
Because you have to.
Yeah.
You know what choice I have of another healthcare provider?
You don't.
I don't have another choice of a healthcare provider or health insurance provider. Mm-hmm. Sorry. I don't have that. I could go pay out of pocket for health insurance, but guess what? My wife's employer pays like 15, 20 grand a year for our health insurance, and we pay a little bit every month towards it. And so the whole thing, since it's so much of it is connected to large groups or your employers, has been worked to be so expensive that most people can't afford to go buy the insurance on their own because the prices are taking into account that most people get it from their employer or through other large group plans.
And here's the thing with the fine print, it's just like any other insurance, right? You guys all have home insurance or renter's insurance or whatever. They set limits on what they can cover because if not, they wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just paid $6,000 for a new roof. You know how much my insurance company paid? $2,700. Mm-hmm. And I have home insurance that covers roofs.
If you're driving your car with liability, but you hit $1 million Bugatti, okay, your insurance is not going to cover the whole $1 million it takes to replace that Bugatti. I'm telling you that. There's limits. Okay? And so
if you have a Bugatti, that's on you. You better have insurance to cover people who don't have underinsured motorists.
They do, but what I'm saying is that your policy is not going to cover the whole thing because they can't. Otherwise, they would be a company that doesn't exist, and then no one has the opportunity to try to offset a large expense by paying a monthly premium. I mean, that's the service they're offering, but there has to be limitations to it. If you're like, okay, I'm going to offer you a service, you just give me, a few dollars a month and I'll cover anything. Just submit a claim, I'll pay it.
Yeah.
Well, there's no guardrails. Like you go out a bit, you become insolvent very quickly. And so there's a give and take. I understand people's frustrations. I really do, because I deal with creating software and offering consulting and other types of things. In large part, I'm assisting providers and the provider side of healthcare to deal with government and payers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it is a giant headache.
Just so you guys, this is Charlie's literal job. He does this every day.
And so I get the nuance, I get the frustration, I get that, I understand all of that. And I build programs to help sift through all of that.
I want to tell you why I think this is so important, why I'm harping on this so much. If you go down the line of, well, this guy was a POS, we really shouldn't care very much. Look at all the bad stuff that he did. We missed the entire point in the way that you argue in favor of a free market, why free markets are important, individualism, all these kinds of things, why that's what's best for the economy and the only moral answer. And when you go down the line of, well, this guy is immoral and did bad things, all this leads to is you're going to replace him with someone who's moral and who isn't going to do those bad things. Instead of realizing that all of these people, a good percentage of these people who end up running massive corporations are a bunch of greedy SOBs. Whatever. That's fine. But that is the way that human beings act in those incentive structures that are built up around them. And so you can't just look at the one person and say, well, you're a greedy POS, you deserve to die, because that doesn't solve any of the problems. Someone else just pops up and they're going to tell you how moral they're going to be, and they're going to screw you over in maybe just a little bit different way because you didn't talk about the actual problem. You let the emotion of being mad at this person for maybe some bad decisions that they made cloud getting to the real solution of the problem, which is that guy, just like all the other guys and girls in a market, need competition to behave in the manner that is best for all of their customers. It's not the benevolence of the butcher or the baker or whatever, okay? They need competition. They need the risk of losing their position, their jobs, their company, because someone else is going to do it better. And the system they work in right now has shielded them from any competition. In fact, the system they work in now has destroyed all of their competition. And this is what you get. This is a government-created, not monopoly, however many-opoly that we have, but for some people, it's a monopoly. Like, I don't really have any other options that I can go to. Some states, you might really not have any other options at all. In some places, they are monopolies and duopolies.
You can't even go out of state to get a different insurance company. I know. You have to get an insurance company that goes with your state, and that's because there's different state regulations.
We used to go down the line on every single one of these things. Like, there are so many reasons that...
Clark says here there's no winning. And look, that's true, but that's life, is it not?
Well, it's just
you're not guaranteed food, you're not guaranteed shelter, you're not guaranteed water. Like, life is difficult.
There's no winning, but it's important to point out why. Like,
yes,
it's not because this guy sucks. It is the system that our government has created. That is the system.
That's the thing. We can create a better system if we talk about the real problem.
Free Talk Live. So what would you imagine how long this body was sitting there for? A matter of weeks? Months?
Probably months. months.
There were about 25 or 30 dead cats in the house.
Oh, my goodness.
It was not a pretty scene. Literally, it was from the floor to the ceiling. This person had put newspapers and magazines, Life magazines, going back probably to the day one, and Geographic going back into the previous century, and food boxes that were, ancient. And she had lived through a tunnel that basically connected her bedroom area to a bathroom.
What about the kitchen? Did she not prepare food?
She kept food in the bedroom and then had a...
That's nice.
I guess she used her window to get in and out. That's the best we could figure out.
Wow. Yeah, this is no problem that a good coat of fire wouldn't fix.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The suspect in the assassination of the chief executive of United Healthcare will fight extradition to New York to face murder charges. Luigi Mangione has been denied bail and will remain in custody in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The Israeli military has confirmed it destroyed Syrian naval facilities overnight and that it's conducted more than 350 airstrikes in the past 48 hours on military assets belonging to the Assad regime. This despite warnings that it could ignite new conflict and jeopardize the transition of power to an interim government in the country. Israel has characterized its operations as defensive, saying it was striking suspected chemical weapons stockpiles to prevent them from falling into the hands of extremists. Rebels have named Syria's new interim prime minister as Mohammed al-Bashir, who previously governed a small pocket of rebel-held territory. Meanwhile, the United States has filed war crimes charges against 2 high-ranking Syrian military figures who it accuses of torturing American citizens. It comes after the government of Bashar al-Assad collapsed, with the former president fleeing the country. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US Justice Department says Jamil Hassan and Abdul Salam Mahmoud, both former Syrian Air Force intelligence officers, are responsible for what they're calling the infliction of cruel and inhuman treatment on detainees. Among those detainees, US citizens. The 2 men allegedly ordered torture, including whipping, beating, burning and electrocuting prisoners. The indictment was filed last month, but only unsealed with the fall of the Syrian government. Washington has issued arrest warrants. However, prosecutors say the pair remain at large, with their exact location seemingly unknown.
Firefighters continue to battle a fast-moving wildfire in the California city of Malibu, and thousands of people remain under evacuation orders. Some students at a local university were forced to shelter overnight in the school's library. Ira Spitzer reports from California.
The Franklin Fire erupted overnight in Malibu, fueled by powerful dry winds blowing from the mountains toward the Southern California coast. Residents reported seeing the hillside covered in flames, and the fire crossed the Pacific Coast Highway with wind gusts of close to 100 kilometers an hour. At Pepperdine University, several hundred students sheltered in place in the school's library overnight. Malibu has opened other evacuation sites, with power shut down across parts of the coastal city of 10,000 people. The National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning indicating a particularly dangerous situation for parts of Los Angeles and Ventura counties through at least Tuesday afternoon.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Hey, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. With fees of less than a penny per transaction, Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies, and they are widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. We're going to be getting back into this conversation about healthcare in the United States. Charlie, if you don't know, has a lot of experience in this industry because that is what he works in. He actually works in revenue cycle management, so helping providers collect on their bills. A lot of experience and a lot of knowledge in this area. This is the area of expertise for us. So after the murder of this CEO and seemingly complete misunderstanding people have about the cost, why the costs are what they are, we're going to talk about it.
The real problem is the cost of healthcare. And right now, somebody said, well, why don't insurance companies work on lowering medical costs? Well, the problem that you have with providers, and you mentioned HCA, well, HCA operates off like an 8% profit margin. Okay. It's not that big either.
Yeah.
Okay. Most of your, right now, you can go look at the publicly available data. Most hospitals and providers are underwater. They're not making any money. They're negative in their net revenue. The ones that are making money are barely making money. Even your nonprofit systems are barely keeping afloat. There's a lot of money in healthcare, but no one's really getting that rich. Okay. Because a lot of them are operating at significant losses.
They're getting rich, but it's because of the volume. It's because so many people are coming through and there's hundreds of millions of people in the U.S. And so people are getting rich, but it's not because they're scraping off 50% profit margins or 100% profit margins on everything that they're selling you. It's because they're getting 3 to 8% profit margins off of 200 million people. And that's why they end up getting rich still.
Another question from the Paid Hitters Club, Bailey. Do they cook the books to make it look like they aren't doing well? No, they cook the books to make it look like they're doing better than they are.
My wife is not cooking the books. Just so you guys know, it's been explained to me very clearly how much money they lose on all that. Like you get your bill from the hospital and you get pissed off. They just lost a bunch of money. Literally 9 times out of 10, they end up losing a bunch of money.
And then they have to make up for it in other areas.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. Most hospitals operate around a 17 to 20% net realization rate. And what that means is if I charge $1,000, I'm likely to see 170 to $200. That's how much I'm actually going to realize net. Now, I still have to pay expenses out of that net. That's just a net realization of what my gross charges are. Okay, that doesn't include now out of that net realization. Now I have to operate my organization off that net realization. There's a major discrepancy between gross charges and what the net realization is because all of your inpatient claims are paid based on a DRG. So it doesn't matter what happens with that patient, you're getting paid off of a DRG, and then your outpatient are paid off of what's called APCs, and then your providers have codes as well. Your physicians, they have codes that they have to go by. So you're kind of paid on all these different rates. And then you have contracts with payers. You have contracts with the government on what the actual percentage that they're going to pay out on this.
I want to show you how things have changed since the government got super heavily involved in healthcare. Our total national health expenditures, this is per capita, and we'll say it in 2022 dollars. Since 1970 has moved from $2,000 per capita to $13,493 per capita. Almost 7 times as much per capita since 1970. Not to try and put on rose-colored glasses or make it sound better than what it actually is. Actual out-of-pocket expenditures have only about doubled over that time. So the amount of money that is spent on healthcare in the United States has gone up by 7 times. But
it's mostly being paid by employers, by the way.
Yes, employers. Actual and the government. Actual out-of-pocket expenditures from people have only doubled during that. From 1970 to 2020 have only doubled, and that's using constant 2022 dollars. It's very interesting to me that the out-of-pocket costs have not increased 7 times like the other. We've shown you guys some of these numbers before, but I think they're super important, especially in the context of insurance and why things have gotten so expensive. Like I said, we can be mad at this guy and said that they denied people they shouldn't have all we wanted, but unless you fix the actual reason that that's happening, you're doing nothing except for just taking glee in some guy getting murdered. If you just blame it on him and blame it on greed, all you're asking for is more government. In 1970, almost 33% of health expenditures were paid out of pocket. Remember how I just told you that out-of-pocket costs have only doubled since this time? It's because out-of-pocket costs are the hardest ones to increase, because it's actual people paying for things, individuals paying for the services that they use. So in 1970, 33% of all the health expenditures were paid by individuals paying for the service that they used. Now that number is 10%. It has been made up mostly by public health insurance. And then other, just so you know, is also public health activities, public health spending. They just put other when it comes to like Native American programs and stuff like that. So that's still public health expenditures down there at the other. Private health insurance was only 20% in 1970 of the payments for public health expenditures. It's 29% now, so it has gone up. But public health insurance went from 22% to 43%. And once again, the most important data point there is individuals paying for the service that they received went from 33% down to 10.6%. All right? That is what actually limits the growth in the expenditure of healthcare costs, is whether or not people can afford it. Just like that's what you think if we had government insurance and everyone had insurance for food, you think the price of food would stay where it is, or you think it would go up? Which one do you think would happen?
It would go up.
If everyone had insurance for...
I've done this example with a burger.
Cell phones and computers and monitors and all this other, you think the cost would go up or you think it would go down? Which is more important, that individuals pay for the product or service that they want, or that all of us put all of our money into a pot and when someone wants something, we say, oh, we can pay for that thing? You think the price will be higher or lower? And that is what's actually happened. And unless you are talking about that problem, you're just taking a little bit of joy in some greedy capitalist bourgeois getting gunned down on the street and not talking about solving the problem at all. I'm talking about solving the problem. The problem is getting people individually back paying for their health care again. That is the only thing that will limit the growth.
The only way you can do that is you have to reduce how expensive it is. And the only way to do that is to move to a free market system.
To reduce regulations in the healthcare industry itself.
That's the only way.
I want to tell you a couple things that happened with the Affordable Care Act. This is directly related to insurance. And we can blame this guy for whatever bad stuff he did, but they have done everything they can to make it as hard as possible for insurance companies to exist and to make any money. And when you make it as hard as possible for them to make any money, they resort to other ways to try and save money, which is trying to screw over people who don't have time to call them and say, hey, you screwed me over. Okay? Which is what they're doing right now because they found every other way to stop them from being able to be profitable. One of their only ways now is to go to their customers and say, yeah, I know you paid me for that, but I'm not going to pay you back for it. How about mandatory coverage of essential health benefits? Small group insurance plans cover a set of essential health benefits, mandatory, including services like maternity care, mental health, prescription drugs, preventative care. That means insurers can no longer offer plans with limited coverage or exclude certain types of care, which increases their administrative and claims processing costs. For some insurers, offering these benefits has resulted in higher premiums and more complex claims management. How about pre-existing conditions? They can no longer deny coverage or charge higher premiums based on pre-existing conditions. You know, I shouldn't have got home insurance until that storm blew the roof off my house. Then I should have called the home insurance company,
got a policy,
and said, you guys got to give me home insurance right now and pay for a new Galderm roof on my house. And if they say no, that is a greedy capitalist. We need to get them out of the marketplace right now. How about that? My house is on fire. I think I'll go buy some insurance. That's a great idea. I just wrecked my car. I think it's time to call Progressive, see if they can get me a policy. If they don't want to cover me, I just wrecked my car. You guys realize how stupid that idea is? That's what we do in health insurance right now.
T-Dub says, what are the chances Trump understands any of what you're saying? I think we need to probably create a department of healthcare efficiency.
Zero.
We need a
chance.
Not a Doge. It would be, I guess it'd be Dohe. Department of Health Efficiency.
Yeah.
Nate and I could run that.
I like that.
For sure. And then we could move it. Basically, we would come in and just scrap everything.
I love this one too. The community rating requirements. They introduced community rating rules which prevent insurers from adjusting premiums based on health status, gender, or occupation. All right. How about occupation? Oh, you're a financial analyst. You sit in the desk all day. Okay, well, yeah, I'll give you this right here. Oh, you work on a barge? Okay, well, same plan as that person. Same plan. Same thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's Oh,
you're an underwater welder?
Yeah. You work in the oil fields? Yeah. Okay, well, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty much like being a school teacher. So, guys, that's what we do in health insurance right now. How about health status? Oh, look at that guy weighs 650 pounds. That's interesting. I reckon I'll get him the same healthcare insurance that Rob Lowe has. That's a pretty good deal right there. Yeah. Because if not, I'll get fined by the government for doing it. Okay? That's the current system that we have right now. All right? How about guaranteed issue? They require insurance to guarantee issue of coverage to any applicant, regardless of their health status, at any time during the year. This provision eliminates open enrollment restrictions in many circumstances, meaning insurers cannot reject applicants outside of designated enrollment periods. Now, a lot of you guys might like that, except for the fact that the reason they did open enrollment is because the name of their service that they provide you is called insurance. And getting rid of their ability to only allow people during open enrollment means that people wait until they need it. You can't deny them for pre-existing conditions. So instead of healthy people paying into the pool all year round, you get only the sick people that ended up coming in and needing it. So you cut out all the ways that they could potentially be profitable unless they rapidly increase the cost of their premiums. But guess what? There's laws against that too. There's only a certain amount that they can do, and they have to go to the governments to ask for permission to increase their rates, which is why so many insurance companies are leaving California. ACA mandates that insurers must submit their proposed premium rate increases for review by state or federal regulators, particularly for the individual and small group markets. They face increased scrutiny on rate hikes, making it more difficult to raise premiums to offset rising healthcare costs or risk pool imbalances. In some cases, states or the federal government can block or modify proposed increases, which may result in insurers being unable to adjust their prices in a timely manner to cover unexpected costs. They also said that they have to use 80 to 85% of the money they take in from their premiums to pay for healthcare services, which sounds really great to you, except for the fact that small insurance companies need to advertise to people to try and get people to come on to their plans, and they can't. It's too hard because almost their entire budget has to go to paying for people's medical expenses. 80 to 85% of it. So then they have a little bit left that they can pay for administrative costs, which the government also makes more expensive, that they can pay for advertising for their company. They can pay for sales, stuff like that. And that's how much they can pay for that. The rest of it has to be paid out in premiums, or they have to take the money and pay it back out to all of their policyholders. And so it hurts smaller companies who are unknown companies who can't get out there and grow their business to compete.
Which is exactly what the large companies want.
They love it. They absolutely, I guarantee you, probably CEO United wrote that.
Yeah.
But guess what? That's not his fault. It's the government's fault for enforcing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's their fault for doing that. All right. What else do we have? Now that we know about the marketplace, all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, the point of everything that we just said is knocking off a couple health insurance CEOs and kind of feeling apathetic about it really just means that you don't want to do anything to solve the actual problems, or you don't understand. Maybe you don't understand what the actual problems are. Maybe you don't understand that all the people in a market are greedy and that they will operate in the incentive environment that has been set up around them by the people who have the use of force against other people, just like any of the other companies that we talk about at any time. And if all we're going to talk about is how, well, these CEOs need to learn a lesson, okay, well, let's have them give up a salary. Let's decrease everyone's premiums by 3.8%, which is how much net profit they're making on things. And let's see if that solves the problem.
Yeah. We already saw what happened to all the nonprofit insurance companies that were created by the ACA.
They're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
They all went out of business.
They're gone.
They're gone. They all went out. They tried. They're gone. And we see what happens in single payer systems, across the pond. You still deal with problems. Like, yeah, sure, people maybe not be paying out of pocket, but you have longer wait times. There's a trade-off, right? Okay, and what's the best system? We have to understand that, first of all, you're not guaranteed anything in life except the fact that you have a right to not be killed. You have a right to property if you're able to get some, and then you have a right to be as free as possible. I would say completely free, but as free as possible. And then that's it. You don't have a right to food. You don't have a right to housing. You don't have a right to health care. Somebody else doesn't have to pay for it for you. And does that put some people who were not as fortunate, nature wasn't as kind to them, and they got from birth, whatever, maybe they got diabetes from birth, maybe they got cancer when they were younger, through no fault of their own. And is that unfair? Yes. Life is full of inequality. It is unfair. And we can help those people voluntarily. That's what Ron Paul talked about. He practiced medicine before the government came in, and we took care of people. We helped handicapped people and people with ailments that weren't able to afford it themselves. We still do to this day. I mean, Americans, after being fleeced for $4.5 trillion, still donate almost $1 trillion to charity every year.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. And we have a history of taking care of people. People want to take care of other people. It's not like people would just be dying in the streets. And so we're never going to have a perfect system. But we can make the current system better and more affordable for a large majority of people. And by doing that affords people to voluntarily give to people who are less fortunate.
What needs to happen right now is they do need to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Like the things that I just read off to people, I want to reiterate one point. They have taken away almost every mechanism for insurance companies to be profitable without screwing over their existing customers that are paying them money. They have taken away almost every other way because insurance is a very specific business, paying into risk pools, trying to calculate that out. You got, what's that called? Actuarialists that figure all this stuff out. It's a very specific business. And they have done everything they can to screw up that whole process and made it so if you want to scrape by on 3.8%, you're going to have to screw over that percentage of your customers that are paying you money because everything else we pretty much made illegal for you guys to do. That actually is the first step that they could take. And then when people say, oh, well, pre-existing conditions, stuff like that, that's not insurance. Let's talk about something else, whatever else it is. Don't call it insurance. Absolutely not do you need insurance for something that you for sure need. Or we just need to call it something else. I guess I would agree if they would change the name of it or whatever it is.
Prior to advances in science, if you had pre-existing conditions, you just died.
Yeah. A lot of people get denied things that were just created in the last 10 years, And they're like, well, these people can't get it and they're going to die. I'm like, they would have died if these evil, greedy people wouldn't have created it in the first place. They were going to die if we weren't in that system. And now we're saying if this person won't pay for that, then that's the problem right there. The problem we got to figure out is how do we get more of that stuff and how do we make it even cheaper? No one's talking about how we're making it cheaper yet. Mm-hmm. That's not what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got to go.
What a great episode.
That's fun.
This was good stuff. All right, y'all, if you enjoyed today's episode or you know people who need to have a little education on the financial side of healthcare.
What I learned in this is that we need to break out many of the topics that we talked about into, because we can talk about insurance, but then we
could write a book.
There's so much other stuff. Yeah. Hospitals, how they're getting paid, providers, all that stuff. I tried to stay up on insurance, but there are so many levels to this problem, and it's going to be tough to roll it back.
We didn't even talk about certificate of need laws.
No, we didn't.
Which is a major problem. We didn't talk. There's so many things we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about all the companies that exist because of this problem, or the one I'm about to create to solve problems. Right?
Yep.
So there's a lot. We could write a book on this. The live group is saying thanks that we should break this out. There's so much to go over. It's a very interesting topic, and I think for individuals, the more you learn how this side of healthcare works, the better equipped you are to appeal decisions, to benefit your family, to maybe not use insurance, to call and still get cash prices because it might be cheaper than using your insurance for that. God, dude.
I'm about to get a windshield for my car for a cash price. Yeah. I've got insurance, but I'm going to pay cash for it.
Doctors, dentists, healthcare providers, they hate insurance companies. In fact, there's a whole movement of doctors who are trying to just accept cash only because the headache that comes with trying to collect from a third-party payer is a nightmare. They just don't want to deal with it. Hey, pay me a monthly subscription. I'll be your doctor. Call me anytime you want. I'll help you out. People seem to like that model. There's a large shift to that kind of model where they don't even want to accept insurance. But the more you understand about it, the more you're able to navigate the system, the better off you and your family will be. And that's still the message. Like, the market is the market. And yeah, does it suck? And does changes need to be made? Sure. And we can argue for that. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And your job is to be as well versed on it as possible so you know how to navigate it and set yourself and your family up for the best position possible. So anyway, I do hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a lot of detail, but we will get into more detail, further points. Maybe we've learned a lot more anyway since, what was that, 5 years ago when we
it's
probably
been a long
did
time
some
since
detailed healthcare.
Since we deep dove.
So yeah, there's more information. There's new laws that have gone into place. Dude, I remember, I'll just tell you this story real quick. There was a new law that was passed in 2019 and 2017. And then all the compliance directors or people who are over compliance for healthcare facilities and things like that had to adhere to this new law and create all of this documentation to comply with this law by the end of 2023. You see this in banking too, with Regulation F and CCP and things like that. So I asked, there was a panel of CFOs, and I asked them, I said, what's it like to budget for adhering to different regulations, knowing that you need to get resources or vendors or other companies to come in and help you supply all of this mandated documentation and different things like that? How in the world do you even budget for something like that? Because I think it's unique to a couple different industries where you literally have to plan out, okay, there's a new law that's passed, I have to adhere to it by 2023, so I need to include in my budget that I either have to contract with some vendors or I have to find additional resources or find other people to come in and supply all of this documentation, all the requirements, so that I meet all this stuff so that I'm not fined by Medicare and Medicaid hundreds of millions of dollars and to benefit my system. It's just insane. It's insane. And there's thousands to millions of examples of things like this.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey.
Who do you think you are?
Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't gonna make it.
Wait a minute.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me?
Because you scared me.
What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served. What is this?
Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men.
working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The suspect in the assassination of the chief executive of United Healthcare will fight extradition to New York to face murder charges. Luigi Mangione has been denied bail and will remain in custody in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The Israeli military has confirmed it destroyed Syrian naval facilities overnight and that it's conducted more than 350 airstrikes in the past 48 hours on military assets belonging to the Assad regime. This despite warnings that it could ignite new conflict and jeopardize the transition of power to an interim government in the country. Israel has characterized its operations as defensive, saying it was striking suspected chemical weapons stockpiles to prevent them from falling into the hands of extremists. Rebels have named Syria's new interim prime minister as Mohammed al-Bashir, who previously governed a small pocket of rebel-held territory. Meanwhile, the United States has filed war crimes charges against two high-ranking Syrian military figures who it accuses of torturing American citizens. It comes after the government of Bashar al-Assad collapsed, with the former president fleeing the country. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US Justice Department says Jamil Hassan and Abdul Salam Mahmoud, both former Syrian Air Force intelligence officers, are responsible for what they're calling the infliction of cruel and inhuman treatment on detainees. Among those detainees, US citizens. The two men allegedly ordered torture, including whipping, beating, burning and electrocuting prisoners. The indictment was filed last month, but only unsealed with the fall of the Syrian government. Washington has issued arrest warrants. However, prosecutors say the pair remain at large, with their exact location seemingly unknown.
Firefighters continue to battle a fast-moving wildfire in the California city of Malibu, and thousands of people remain under evacuation orders. Some students at a local university were forced to shelter overnight in the school's library. Ira Spitzer reports from California.
The Franklin fire erupted overnight in Malibu, fueled by powerful dry winds blowing from the mountains toward the Southern California coast. Residents reported seeing the hillside covered in flames, and the fire crossed the Pacific Coast Highway with wind gusts of close to 100 kilometers an hour. At Pepperdine University, several hundred students sheltered in place in the school's library overnight. Malibu has opened other evacuation sites, with power shut down across parts of the coastal city of 10,000 people. The National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning indicating a particularly dangerous situation for parts of Los Angeles and Ventura counties through at least Tuesday afternoon.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the joy in Syria over Bashar al-Assad's ouster from power and his flight to asylum in Russia gives way to horror as efforts continue to find those people whose lives he upended during his 24 years in power. It is hard, given some of the images the world has witnessed from Syria since the weekend, to remember that when Assad first ascended to the Syrian leadership, he was considered a reformer Obama, a man who could modernize his country after the brutality of his own father, Hafez al-Assad, who ruled Syria for nearly 3 decades. But Emma Beals, a non-resident fellow at the Middle East Institute and senior advisor at the European Institute of Peace, says now the last couple of days have put paid to any illusions about the nature of Bashar's own regime.
The flip side of yesterday's joy is just utter sadness and tragedy as the full scale of what a butcher Assad was comes to light. And some of us knew that. We've been following in a lot of detail for many years, researching, these gulags and what was happening in them. But, watching them desperately try to get people out of Sednaya and the underground basements there, the secret prisons, just the scale of horror has just been astonishing.
Tomorrow, what to expect from Syria's rebel leader, now with his fingers on the levers of power in Damascus. He says he wants to unify the country and has put his jihadist past behind him. But can he be trusted? With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The suspect in the assassination of the chief executive of United Healthcare will fight extradition to New York to face murder charges. The Israeli military's confirmed it destroyed Syrian naval facilities overnight. And the US has filed war crimes charges against 2 high-ranking Syrian military figures who it accuses of torturing American citizens. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
The Supreme Court's sidekick, Kid Justice, is killed by mad genius Dr. Contempto. Thousands of elderly Japanese Americans are rounded up for an internment camp's 70th reunion. And a report confirms the habitat of Bengal tigers is now down to a studio apartment in Jaipur, India. As it was once prophesied in the weekly news recap videos of old, here now it emerges before your very eyes. This is The Onion Week in Review. Local man Matthew Hunker announced this week that he has such strong brand loyalty to Mazda that he's willing to kill for the Japanese car brand. Hunker told reporters that if he hears anyone say anything negative about Mazda's cutting-edge features, or if anyone places any other car brand above the award-winning line of 2013 Mazdas, he will, quote, personally beat them to death.
You think I wouldn't slit your goddamn throat in the name of Mazda? You think I'm f***ing around? Go ahead, say something bad about the top-rated Mazda 6, or the award-winning CX-5. See what f***ing happens. I f***ing dare you. You think I'm afraid to go to jail?
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Hey, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. If you don't know already, we have a daily podcast called Good Morning Liberty that has 1,429 episodes so far. Go check that out. On that podcast, we do something every single week called Dumb Bleep of the Week. That's where our Fed Haters Club throws in submissions. We round them all up into about 10 options for people. We present them to everyone, and then the Fed Haters Club votes on those dumb things. Speaking of Joe Biden, Dumb Bleep number 1 is the pardon that began our week. The first one is this headline from Politico that says, Republicans pounce on Biden pardoning his son, Hunter. The pounce part is one of the dumbs. This is a long-running thing. The Democrats do something really crazy or really terrible, and then the headlines are, Republicans pounce. It's a narcissistic abuse cycle kind of thing to do, where you do something that's really bad, and then the reaction to that is the story. So you can say, yeah, we wrote about this. We wrote about the Republicans' reaction to Biden doing this. Of course we did. And not so much about the thing itself.
And then Republicans say Biden is a liar.
Yeah, that's the
after he pardons his son. Well, he is.
Liars in quotes. And Republicans, see, Politico can't post an article saying Biden is a liar. He said he wasn't going to pardon his son. They can't do that. The story has to be Republicans say Biden is a liar for pardoning Hunter. I don't know how many times did he say he wasn't going to pardon Hunter, and then he pardoned Hunter.
And not only him, his press secretary, spokesman for the White House.
But of course, they've done a good job making excuses for this. First off, they didn't know Trump was going to win, and then they didn't know Trump was going to appoint someone like Kash Patel, who's clearly going to just go after Trump's political opponents. And so they're just doing what they have to do because the incoming fascist administration is going to be going after people, and that's the only reason they have to do all these things. Yeah. More on that coming up. We've got a few things in here like Jamie Raskins. Some of the Democrats are defending this, by the way. Let's see. Jamie Raskin, one of the impeachment managers against Trump, told CNN earlier in the day that any possibility of a pardon for Hunter Biden could be rooted in taking issue with the case itself. There is a defense called selective prosecution. If you can show the government has a set of cases that all look alike, but they pick one person out to prosecute based on, say, a political animus towards the person, which essentially is the claim that Donald Trump has been making. Yes, just so you know. Raskin made the argument that Hunter was a political prosecution, selective prosecution. Mm-hmm. All the while, Democrats have been saying that that's not a thing.
And all the while, they're going after Trump.
Yeah. Anna Navarro says that, now what's great here is, I think she just typed into Chat GPT, like, okay, who else has been pardoned? Because she said Woodrow Wilson pardoned his brother-in-law, Hunter DeButz. Bill Clinton pardoned his brother, Roger. Donald Trump pardoned his daughter's father-in-law, Charlie Kushner, and just appointed him ambassador to France. But tell me again how Joe Biden is setting precedent. Laughing emoji, crime face laughing emoji. Thing is, Woodrow Wilson didn't pardon anyone named Hunter DeButz. There is a person named that was alive during the time of Woodrow Wilson, but you could look up members of Woodrow Wilson's family. I did like this comment that said Hunter DeButz did nothing wrong, and it's got a lot of retweets and likes on it. I did want to point out Joe Biden setting precedent. This was an 11-year pardon, and that is sort of setting precedent. The closest thing they can come up with is the pardon of Nixon, and that wasn't even an 11-year pardon. By the way, the White House is currently weighing preemptive pardons for all of Trump's potential targets. Meaning like all of them. People like Liz Cheney, of course. He wants to put her in front of a firing squad. We got Mark Milley. We've got Dr. Fauci.
Shifty Shift.
Adam Schiff, who lied repeatedly about all this evidence against Trump and the Russia thing. Just a lot of people like that. Now, why would
Trump have any motivation to go after anyone?
Because he's a fascist. That's why. That's the only, because he's against democracy.
God.
That's the only answer. You see, one thing that can't happen for people on the left is if Trump becomes the president and then doesn't do a bunch of fascist stuff, or doesn't destroy democracy, or doesn't jail a bunch of his political opponents. Okay, that's one thing that absolutely can't happen from their point of view. And so to protect that, one thing they might do is go ahead and pardon all of those people so they can say, well, look what he would have done if we wouldn't have pardoned all of those people.
Narcissists are really good at getting ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I know. Narcissists are always good at that. They're always planning, always manipulating. How about a quick one here? Canada bans more types of firearms and proposes donating the guns to Ukraine. They're outlawing another 324 firearm varieties.
Jesus.
Guns, which they've already outlawed like 2,000 different ones since 2020, I believe. Guns the public safety minister says belong on the battlefield, not in the hands of hunters or sport shooters. Honestly, this announcement is proof that these guns belong in the hands of the Canadians, and it's to go after people like this. I said it. Let's go to this.
Today, the government is adding a further 324 unique makes and models of assault-style firearms to the list of prohibited firearms in Canada. This prohibition takes effect immediately. This means these firearms can no longer be legally used, sold, or imported in Canada, and can only be transferred or transported under extremely limited circumstances. As part of that process, the government of Canada has committed to the Ukrainian government to identify whether some of these guns could be donated to support the fight for democracy in Ukraine.
That last statement there. We're going to take guns from our citizens and then give them to you so that you can fight for
our
freedom.
Democracy is going to confiscate guns from our citizens and give them to this country, the people in that country, so they can fight for democracy.
That's so ridiculous.
Oh my God, I love it. It's so good. These people make it too easy. All right, quickly for Dumb Bleat number 3, I want to make fun of the media, and this time Newsweek. Just a real funny, dumb thing, just really fast. They're talking about Kash Patel, and they cite Kash Patel's dad, Dr. Parik Patel, father of the FBI director nominee Kash Patel. The problem is that's not his dad. It's a fake account that just says a bunch of dumb stuff all the time. But they actually cited a tweet in a news story from Newsweek.
This is how good your journalists are.
Talking about Kash Patel. Going after, they're talking about the pardon of Hunter Biden, of course, and Kash is one of these people that would have gone after Hunter Biden, and now he can't. And so they cite this parody account that mainly talks about crypto all the time. But after Kash Patel was nominated, he just started talking about his son, Kash Patel. So it's really good. He says, "Thank you, Newsweek, for amplifying my message. Hunter Biden was pardoned just in time before my son Cashew could prosecute him for his crimes." He also has said other great articles linked to his website if you want to go read from Dr. Parik Patel. I mean, it looks real. Just look through the photos and stuff on here.
Yeah.
It's just his face crudely pasted over the top of other people's faces. And then this was my favorite. He's congratulating his son. Okay, and this is a typical thing. He said, "From directing my motel to becoming director of the FBI, heart, so proud of my son, Cash Yap."
I think, isn't Patel like one of the most popular Indian names out there? There's so many Patels. And I can't believe an actual publication cited a parody account as a source. That is fantastic.
You just got to trust the media, okay?
Yeah.
They're fighting against disinformation all the time. So that's really good
Directing
stuff.
my motel. That is great.
So a Delaware judge overruled the supermajority of shareholders who own Tesla and voted twice to pay Elon Musk. You know, he had that $50 billion payday, and the judge overruled it several months ago. Well, Tesla held another shareholders vote just to reiterate that the shareholders of Tesla wanted him to get this payday, and a supermajority of the shareholders voted that he should get this payday. And the Delaware judge came out and said, no, you can't have that. Elon Musk says shareholders should control company votes, not judges. I'll get to another talking point on that here in a sec. Representative Mark Pocan says a guy worth $330 billion throwing a temper tantrum because he can't get his $56 billion payday. Hashtag tax the rich.
Jesus.
Now, there's a couple things on top of that. First off, that $330 billion counts the $56 billion payday that he can't have. So that's, you're already using fuzzy math. By the way, the $56 billion is now worth about $100 billion, actually, because of how much Tesla's gone up. And so actually...
And by the way, this isn't $56 billion in cash, okay?
No, it's just in options.
This is because Elon had a deal with the board that said, hey, if you reach these certain numbers, we're going to give you these options that you can exercise.
Yeah.
And he's trying to exercise those options.
What's funny is they set up basically a framework that no one thought he was going to hit. And he was like, okay, I'll go and hit that. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and hit that. And so he hit that along with probably a lot of other things. But on top of that, I want to mention that shareholders should control company votes. The crazy thing about publicly traded stocks is that you'd think socialist type people would be in favor of shareholders who are part owners in the
democratically voting, which is a democratic process
for the company to do a thing. But since those shareholders, the people, you just hold a share and you get an email saying, hey, do you want to vote in this thing? I voted in the thing, And
well, you probably voted against this greedy billionaire.
Greedy, terrible stuff. Yeah, they should get rid of Musk. He's been terrible for the company. They've been way better off without him. But what's the weird thing? This is actually pretty democratic. The way that shareholders can hold votes and decide things that they're going to do. And it's pretty wild that you can be a part owner in a company. Tesla's trading like $360 something. Like if you want to be a part owner of if you want to partly own the means of production with a bunch of other people, just kick in a little bit of money.
You could be an entrepreneur.
I know. In fact, a bunch of people who work for Tesla get Tesla shares and they end up owning a share of those means of production. So kind of a weird thing where that, I don't know, for some reason they don't accept that, I guess because I know what it is. Some people get really, really rich because they have more shares than other people, and they don't like it when people get rich. That's actually what it is. They'd rather us all be poor.
They would rather CEOs of these large companies be executed in the streets.
We'll talk about that. Don't worry, it's in here. We did have this video from Kyle Kulinski, who was just a terrible, insufferable human being.
Super fag.
He was just no, that hair looks great. What are you talking about? Talking about Elon Musk, and just while we're on that, I get it. Like all of a sudden, you don't like Elon Musk, but this trend of talking about how stupid Elon Musk is or how low IQ Elon Musk is a thing that people on the left are doing, like just calling him dumb.
The Destiny started.
Destiny was doing that, and they'll point out like how weird he is, or how awkward he is, or how he says stuff, and never mention the fact that he's autistic.
Yeah.
Like they won't mention that. They'll just say like, oh, this guy, he behaves like a child, And I'm like, dude's autistic. He's literally on the spectrum. Like, why aren't we celebrating this? It's wild.
Like, the guy's a joke, right? He really is a joke.
Language.
The more I hear him talk, I'm astonished at how dumb Elon Musk is. I thought the argument that was most convincing is like, he's a weird guy, he's an eccentric guy, but look at what he did with SpaceX and Starlink and all these companies. He's got to be somewhat intelligent. The more I hear him talk, the more I'm like, holy this dude is like a 14-year-old 4channer who is genuinely idiotic and tripped over his dick and became successful, right?
That's what success follows idiotic people.
That's what it is. In fact, I think we all just got the layout. We got the blueprint. We all need to try tripping over our dicks and see if we can become the richest person in the world. I think it's a pretty good plan. That's actually probably this guy's understanding of wealth. He was like, well, I guess that means Elon tripped over his dick and mine. I can't find it, and so I'm not able to trip over it, so I can be wealthy.
Fed Haters Club says PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, boring company, all by chance.
There's a trend. Seems
all by chance.
All just random dick tripping. That's all that happened. The luckiest dick tripper we've ever seen in American history. How about
Somebody
that?
said they didn't know he was autistic. So Elon has come out and said that he has Asperger's. So
did that drop off the spectrum, actually? Did they change that?
No, it's just included in the spectrum now. They don't delineate Asperger's as something separate.
Gotcha.
You're just
That's
on
what
the
it
spectrum.
was. Yeah. Okay.
I would have to say, like, if Asperger's was still a diagnosis, that would probably be closer to what Parker would be diagnosed with.
Mm-hmm. Parker's Charlie's son, by the way, for people who don't know
son.
that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it is now just considered part of the ASD, autism spectrum disorder.
So he is, he's on that. Let's make fun of this misinformation expert from Stanford, Jeff Hancock, real quick. Go ahead, Charlie, read this tweet.
All right, from the quote, "You couldn't make this stuff up" file, a quote misinformation expert at Stanford, Jeff Hancock, billed the state of Minnesota $600 an hour to prepare an expert declaration on the dangers of AI-generated content. He swore under penalty of perjury that everything stated in the declaration was true and correct. But after it was discovered the declaration contained fabricated sources, he was forced to admit he had relied on AI to write the declaration. Misinformation experts continue to prove themselves to be some of the least trustworthy people on the planet.
I saw
he was just doing an experiment to show you the dangers.
That was the point.
That was the whole point.
The whole point right there, except for he did swear that everything in there was factual and true. And he did reiterate his billing of $600 an hour. And, this grift is still going right now. This misinformation grift is going. I'm hoping that a lot of this changes. I don't know if it will. I'm hoping a lot of this changes in the next few years. Listen to that Mike Benz interview on Joe Rogan. Good God. The structure, the entire ecosystem that has been set up for all these people trying to control speech in order to help whatever the establishment or the government is just wild. And it is clear that the government has found every way to control speech without breaking the law, like paying for other organizations who fight to control speech
Also,
because they can't do it.
Here's the other thing. How are we missing out on these government contracts?
We got to get some government contracts.
How can I not be charging $600 an hour to supply some information?
I know.
Jesus
try to
Christ.
do that. We got to try and figure out what that is.
How do you market yourself as someone who's some kind of expert? I like what Fat Mac says here in the live group. No such thing as misinformation.
That's misinformation.
That's actually, I would say that's true. There's such thing as called free speech. Now you can prove it to be false.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, hey, that, you
could be wrong.
Yeah, you could be wrong, but it's not a misinformation.
How about Dumb Bleep number 6? I want to make sure we have time for this. Will be a long one, and we have a couple other long ones. This is all tied. We're just going to call, actually, I don't know what to call this one. We'll call this one gay. Northwestern Ontario town has been fined $10,000 for refusing to celebrate Pride Month. That's good. An Ontario town that
Canada seems to be on one lately.
Man, Canada, freaking Canada. We need to liberate these folks from tyranny. We need to bring democracy to Canada.
Let's donate our guns to Canada.
An Ontario town and its mayor have been fined a total of $15,000 for refusing to celebrate Pride Month. In a decision from November 20th, the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. Imagine you don't celebrate a month and you get brought before the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario ordered the town of Emo. That must be where that music came from. To pay $10,000 and Mayor Harold McQuaker to pay $5,000 to Borderland Pride for violating the Human Rights Code and discriminating against the organization. Imagine like the entitlement that comes with getting this town to pay you money because they didn't glorify you for a month.
As an organization.
Wow. Just wow. The tribunal has also ordered the town's mayor and CAO to complete human rights training. The issue began in 2020 when Borderland Pride requested the town declare June as Pride Month and fly or display an LGBTQ2S plus flag for a week during the month of June. Borderland Pride's proclamation was brought forward at a May 2020 council meeting by No One Cares.
I wouldn't pay it.
And they decided not to do it. Shortly after the vote, the mayor said, who voted against it, said there's no flag being flown for the other side of the coin. There's no flags being flown for the straight people. So there's no discrimination here because they don't have a straight flag and therefore refuse to fly the crooked flag, Man.
This is so ridiculous.
This is flaggatry if I've ever seen it before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Let's talk about this SCOTUS case right fast. This is the lawyer who...
The Fed Haters Club, by the way, is saying to build the wall, and they're not talking about the Mexico border wall.
We might need a wall on both sides, honestly.
Yeah, we might.
I think we're going to make Canada pay for it. For sure. The lawyer arguing in front of the court, I don't know where it is in this video now, unfortunately. The lawyer ordering in front of the court mentioned that kids knew as early as 2 years old that they were trans. Let me see if I can find
that.
God, that's so loud and screeching and annoying.
These are doctors who are wanting to treat their patients in the best way that they know how, based on the best available evidence to us. And these are young people who may have known since they were 2 years old exactly who they are, who suffered for 6-7 years before they had any relief. And what's happening here, it's not...
Charlie, 2 years old?
Yeah, kids know exactly what they want to do.
God.
Yeah.
These people. I know what
Fat
you're
Haters
thinking.
Club is saying that they're going to go out on a limb and say that this guy was not born with
alternative theory, this guy just sucked on a helium balloon right beforehand. And that is what your voice sounds like. Those are the only plausible, that's the only explanation I can actually come up with.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The suspect in the assassination of the chief executive of United Healthcare will fight extradition to New York to face murder charges. Luigi Mangione has been denied bail and will remain in custody in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The Israeli military has confirmed it destroyed Syrian naval facilities overnight and that it's conducted more than 350 airstrikes in the past 48 hours on military assets belonging to the Assad regime. This despite warnings that it could ignite new conflict and jeopardize the transition of power to an interim government in the country. Israel has characterized its operations as defensive, saying it was striking suspected chemical weapons stockpiles to prevent them from falling into the hands of extremists. Rebels have named Syria's new interim prime minister as Mohammed al-Bashir, who previously governed a small pocket of rebel-held territory. Meanwhile, the United States has filed war crimes charges against two high-ranking Syrian military figures who it accuses of torturing American citizens. It comes after the government of Bashar al-Assad collapsed, with the former president fleeing the country. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US Justice Department says Jamil Hassan and Abdul Salam Mahmoud, both former Syrian Air Force intelligence officers, are responsible for what they're calling the infliction of cruel and inhuman treatment on detainees. Among those detainees, US citizens. The two men allegedly ordered torture, including whipping, beating, burning and electrocuting prisoners. The indictment was filed last month, but only unsealed with the fall of the Syrian government. Washington has issued arrest warrants. However, prosecutors say the pair remain at large, with their exact location seemingly unknown.
Firefighters continue to battle a fast-moving wildfire in the California city of Malibu, and thousands of people remain under evacuation orders. Some students at a local university were forced to shelter overnight in the school's library. Ira Spitzer reports from California.
The Franklin Fire erupted overnight in Malibu, fueled by powerful dry winds blowing from the mountains toward the Southern California coast. Residents reported seeing the hillside covered in flames, and the fire crossed the Pacific Coast Highway with wind gusts of close to 100 kilometers an hour. At Pepperdine University, several hundred students sheltered in place in the school's library overnight. Malibu has opened other evacuation sites, with power shut down across parts of the coastal city of 10,000 people. The National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning indicating a particularly dangerous situation for parts of Los Angeles and Ventura counties through at least Tuesday afternoon.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Let's see here. Sotomayor made of course, the left-leaning judges are in favor of
mutilating kids.
Yeah, I guess of mutilating kids. They want to strike down the Tennessee law, and the right-leaning judges don't want to strike down that law. And so Sotomayor made the argument that every medical treatment has risks, just like aspirin. Aspirin has risks, and so that.
And this is something a panel of 9 lawyers should be deciding.
Cannot eliminate the risk of detransitioners, so it becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk. Even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not...
You know what? I think she's right. We should just voluntarily give kids chemo if they feel like they have cancer.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. Every medical treatment has risks, just like aspirin.
Yeah, if they're feeling depressed, give them alcohol.
Great argument.
Give them that drug.
Oh, God.
Jeez.
All right.
Another good point. Apparently, according to the government, there's no risk with the COVID vaccine, though. So that we do have one medical treatment.
One treatment. We found it. No risk.
Risk-free.
Only benefits. The thing is with those medical treatments, like you are actually treating a medical ailment, like a physical thing wrong with your body. You know? You're talking about creating physical problems with a child's body based on something that might be wrong in their brain or just a phase that they're going through or whatever. You're electively, voluntarily getting them into this risk based on a mental state that they're in. And so you're attacking their body.
And I hate when judges speak with that condescending tone. I'm sorry, counselor. If I was like Brett Kavanaugh sitting on the bench next to her or something, I would have been like, I'm sorry, Justice Sotomayor. Are you kidding me? You're telling me this is the same risk as taking an aspirin? Like, how do you keep your mouth shut when someone's making a stupid point like that?
I don't know. But let's move on to the one that you sent in earlier, Charlie.
All right. I just want everyone to know
it's a historic day. So
we've come a long way in women's rights.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, in a first, a transgender woman wins Model of the Year.
That's awesome. I'm happy.
Alex Consani is a star on TikTok and on the runway. In her speech at the Fashion Awards in London, she acknowledged the struggles of other pioneers. So a dude that transitioned into a woman won the Women's Model of the Year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there we go.
I did want to point out, though, the New York Times did let me know that this is troubling. Not troubling, but it's complex because this model allegedly might be racist. And so we have to consider the implications of that. It's problematic, in fact, because sometimes this person, Miss Consani, a 21-year-old white woman from California, deploys an accent imitative of the way some black people speak.
Oh, so he's pretending to be a woman and he's pretending to speak.
No, all you got to do is identify as black. This is problem solved.
Problem solved.
Who cares? Like that's a bridge too far. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll do the sex thing.
He's a woman of color.
From what I can tell, he said he is a woman of color. So what are we talking about here? Plus, are you telling me that black people speak a specific way? What are we even talking about here?
He's appropriating black language?
Yeah. All right. So number 6 was technically called LGBTQIA+. In the voting, by the way.
You forgot the 2.
The 2SL. I forgot about 2SL in there. LGBTQ 2SIA+, I think is the right.
This reminds me of when Bruce Jenner won the the first trans award for Athlete of the Year.
Yeah.
And, like I said, we've come a long way in women's suffrage, women's rights, that men are winning all the women's awards.
Yeah.
Now.
Hey, they're pioneers. Okay. How about number 7? I want to highlight this thing going on with the work from home for government employees. Of course, this week we brought up the fact that Biden struck a deal with a union that shouldn't exist to allow 42,000 Social Security Administration workers to continue working from home all the way up until 2029. And this Senator Joni Ernst has been calling out the government on this, and something she's, I believe she chairs, does she chair the Senate DOGE committee, which is a real thing? Let me see here. Maybe we'll find that. During her first meeting as head of the Senate's Department of Government Efficiency Caucus. The DOGE caucus is an official thing now. Okay.
Well, it's not like a government sanction. You can have, there's a freedom caucus, there's whatever. You can create whatever caucus you want.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a caucus.
I will say Elon Musk went to Washington, D.C., though, and had his first DOGE meeting with people there.
With the DOGE caucus?
I guess so.
I didn't realize that this was going on, actually. This is something that I hadn't heard much about until, of course, everyone else started talking about it. But bureaucrats have been found in a bubble bath on the golf course, running their own business, and even getting busted doing crime while on the taxpayers' time. Members of President Biden's own cabinet claim to be on the clock while being out of office and unreachable. Just 3% of the federal workforce teleworked daily prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, 6% of workers report in-person full-time work. So it was 97% before COVID people that worked in the office, and now it's 6% that work in the office still.
Full-time.
Post-COVID full-time. Let's see. Most federal employees are eligible to work telework, and 90% of those are. Some come to the office as infrequently as once a week. The Biden administration redacted the locations of over 281,000 rank and file federal employees. And so one of the crazy things about this is they get paid still based on the cost of living in Washington, D.C. And some of them have moved to other parts of the country that are way cheaper, and they still get what's called a locality pay for living in D.C., and they live in a much cheaper place. And of course, we know that they're probably not actually working. Some of them have even started their own other businesses while they were still collecting a check from the government and doing nothing.
Sounds like what I would do.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Yeah, of course.
Take advantage of the situation you're in.
What's scary here is, given what the administration did earlier in the week with the Social Security Administration, I would not be surprised if they strike more deals over the next month to try and protect as many of these workers as possible. Because one of the things Trump and DOGE have been saying is everyone's got to come back to work. Everyone has to come back. And if you don't, that's fine. You're fired. That's it. You just get fired after that.
Maybe not the IRS. We'll just leave them working from home on the golf course taking bubble baths.
They said that's an easy way to weed out a bunch of people, because a bunch of people especially the ones that moved away, are not going to want to move back to DC. And so a lot of people are just going to get fired. They're going to have to quit when they decide not to come back, and that's a requirement. On top of that, not only does the union protect these workers, they are also keeping the government from closing down the empty buildings where they're supposed to work. Government buildings average an occupancy rate of 12%.
Perfect.
12%. And a large portion of those people are security that are protecting the building. Okay, no joke. It's no joke. I'm being serious.
They're protecting the fact that no one's there.
The government owns 7,697 vacant buildings and another 2,265 that are partially empty. Let's see. They spend $8 billion a year maintaining and leasing these buildings, and another 7.7 spent for the energy to keep them running. And then they also keep them furnished Also, we did a story sometime around COVID or right before COVID where they spent all this ridiculous money to furnish these buildings. And of course, they're not even getting used anymore. So yeah, they need to be closed down. In fact, the EPA's headquarters has undrinkable water in it because it's stayed so stagnant this entire time that the water is more dangerous than Flint, Michigan.
God.
Okay.
At EPA?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, how the turntables.
It's great stuff. Really great stuff. Gotta love that.
I don't know which one to vote for right now. There's so much dumb happening.
We still got 3 more. We got to run through real quick. Let me make fun of Robert Reich. Spotify laid off 17% of its workforce in 2023 while reportedly paying artists just 0.003 cents per stream.
That's on average.
Or 0.03 cents per stream, which is normal for streaming platforms. In 2024, the company hit record profits while its CEO's net worth jumped to $7 billion. Don't you think it's time to put a wrap on corporate greed and exploitation? Now, let me tell you about Spotify's record profits they hit in 2024. Do you want to guess why it's a record, Charlie?
Ooh, inflation?
Because they have never hit profit except for in 2024. So this is a record profit year for them. It is the first profitable year for them that they have ever had since they were created.
This is the first net profit?
The first profit.
Quarter? Year?
Maybe in the year, if they finish out, it will be the first profitable year that they've ever had. Now, they have had, I think, 3 profitable quarters in the other previous, 15 years that they've existed.
But you're saying for basically 15 years, they've lost money.
They just lost money the entire time. Just lost money. By the way, they still lose money on the streaming. The only reason they're making money is because of the podcast hosting that they're doing and all the ad revenue they're raking in from that. Okay? That's where they're actually making the money. They still lose it on the streaming. Okay? They've never been profitable on that. They never even got close to making money until they started doing the podcast and having their own podcast hosting platform that they have now. But people like Robert Reich want to point out that the CEO's net worth jumped by $7 billion. Oh, by the way, they bring the charts. Look at that profit spike right there in 2021 to negative 0.35%. That's pretty crazy. That was a record year for them, negative 0.35%. That's pretty crazy.
It's great.
But now they have made it up into actual profitability where they're probably going to close out the year being profitable, which has led their stock to do this. Plus 519% since 2023. And yes, their CEO's net worth has jumped by $7 billion because
he owns shares.
He owns shares of the company.
Yeah.
Yes. It was pretty great that they had the whole Joe Rogan controversy and then they went up 500%. Spotify's dead.
Cancel Joe Rogan.
Cancel it. Cancel Spotify.
Wow.
Okay. How about CEOs that get gunned down in the street?
All right, this is from Professor Zinkus. He said, today we mourn the death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, gunned down. Wait, I'm sorry. Today we mourn the deaths of the 68,000 Americans who needlessly die each year so that insurance company execs like Brian Thompson can become multi-millionaires.
All right, so that got 5 million views. That got 11,000 retweets right there, 93,000 likes, 5 million views.
By the way, we did an extensive healthcare episode yesterday, but just barely scratched the surface. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, go check it out.
Yeah, and also I just tweeted basically a rundown of some of the points on Obamacare that we went through yesterday. If you want to go find that tweet, it's our most recent one. Retweet that, hit like, something like that. That would be good. Get that information out in front of people. One thing I want to point out is this thing, 68,000 people die so they can make money. It's an arbitrary line that they've drawn because I bet even if those 68,000 people were saved, don't you think that there are still more people who could be saved if even more things would be provided to them by other people?
Mm-hmm.
So then you get to those people. How many people end up dying if we just took away all the money from all the rich people? That this many people wouldn't die. And so as long as anyone is ever dying of something that is treatable, well, then this capitalist system must be taken down. But unfortunately, it's not even a capitalist system. It's a fascist system is what it is. It's been a fascist system for quite some time when it comes to healthcare.
All roads lead to fascism.
They do. That's, by the way, when you're still allowed private ownership, but the government controls it, which is what we have in the health insurance industry and the healthcare industry itself. Professor Zinkas, by the way, is a professor at Columbia. He's a TEDx speaker, he's a trauma expert, and he's anti-violence. Just so you know. Yeah.
He's a commie.
It says the working class is under no obligation to mourn the deaths of those who are actively trying to kill them. The way that you're actively trying to kill someone is not paying for someone else to whatever. I don't know if I can wrap my head around the whole thing. Power to the People says, are the folks who are upset over the death of the health insurance CEO also upset over thousands of Americans who die each year due to lack of health care? If not, it's clear you care more about the life of a person at the top of the system than all the lives they destroyed. This person has a hammer and sickle in their profile photo. That's cool. They, them might be giants, hammer and sickle. Says the important thing about the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO is that no people were hurt. And then first reply to this says, this is a huge day and victory for the left. Whoever did this is a hero and must be protected if he is ever found.
And I went over this yesterday. Look, I understand people's frustrations. We did a deep dive yesterday on the absolute atrocious system, healthcare system that we currently have. But it's not United's fault. It's not Brian Thompson's fault that it is the way that it is. You know, it's not his doing. He's operating in a market that is largely propped up and held up in the way in which it is because of government.
Yeah, the system they've set up, like we explained yesterday, has taken away almost every avenue for them to make profit with a normal business model for an insurance company. The ACA has destroyed that. And they even threw price controls on top of it in the ACA. And what do you get with price controls? You get shortages with price controls. But you can't have
more expensive.
But you can't have normal shortages with insurance because they're mandated to cover everyone. And so what happens? They cover everyone, but then they find every possible way they can to not actually cover everyone that they're covering. So what you're actually getting are price controls leading to shortages, but they must give everyone the insurance. So the shortages are occurring in other ways. They're occurring through claim denials. That's the way that they're shortagizing people.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a technical term. So just so you know,
let's just get rid of all insurance companies.
That was an argument that was told to me yesterday.
Let's just
outlaw for-profit insurance.
No, I'm talking outlaw insurance
in general.
Yes.
Well,
just
make
pay
that
out,
argument.
We'll just go back to people paying out of pocket.
It's a great idea.
Then you don't have to deal with CEOs like this. You know?
Yeah, it's a great idea. Great. Let's see. This one says, can anyone explain to me why regular Americans with no actual capital feel the constant need to defend capitalism? My response to this was, I don't have anything stupid to say, but I still defend your right to say stupid things. That was the first thing I could come up with. You defend it if you have no actual capital. First off, you have your human capital. You got yourself, which is a value, okay? You defend it because it's the right thing and that people have property rights. And even if someone has way more than you do, or they have a lot of capital, that's their right to do that. And it's the only moral system that exists. If you got a more moral system than that, let me know. But that's why you defend it. That's why we defend it. That's why I defend this against people being happy about the CEO or even apathetic about the CEO getting killed, is because I know what this leads to. It leads to the kulaks. That's what it actually leads to. And you can Google that if you want to. We don't have enough time to go through it.
It leads to the middle class becoming the bourgeoisie, by the way.
So we legitimately only have 6 more minutes, and we have a hard stop, like a very hard stop, just so you guys know. You heard a lot of our comments about this yesterday, but then we'll move on to Dumb Bleep. Yeah, see, I had a bunch of others. So there's a whole thread of memes here. Make capitalists afraid again, and it's a picture of the shooter. I mean, this is what this leads to. If you don't defend the worst among us, that's where you go.
And then this reminds me of the CEO of Starbucks who was being grilled by Congress, and he said, Look, I grew up in federal housing.
Yeah.
My parents never owned a home. No one gave me $1 billion. I earned it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I share my wealth with all the Starbucks employees. That my wealth is being shared. Like, that's the thing. And if you're jealous of that, you live in a system, you have the opportunity to do the same thing. That's the thing about capitalism.
You know who just shared a bunch of wealth?
If you live in a system where you don't have those opportunities, then you're capped at getting rice for dinner every day.
If you can get the rice.
If
you
you
get
make
too
it-
much, they'll make you bury your own
If
kids
you make
alive.
it in line in time.
Yeah.
These fucking people, I can't stand it. Like there needs to be a war, another war.
Oh, there will be. That is, the class war is the war. And
these
maybe
idiots.
the next election we're going to have more of a socialism versus capitalism conversation or whatever. That could actually be what the next big election cycle is on. But the real divide here is the class war divide. It is the socialist and the semi-capitalists. And the problem is the capitalists need to be free market capitalists and not crony capitalists. But let's move on to who else is sharing the wealth. It's all of Haktua Girls fans are sharing the wealth with her. And I just want to make fun of her and them.
Potentially her. We don't know if it's her.
Could be the people who set it up, because let's be honest, you think she's a big...
she may not even be involved.
You think she's the most knowledgeable person you ever met?
Here's the thing. Somebody could have just created a Haktua coin.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that she's involved.
Well, she is involved. She's literally involved in the coin.
Oh, did she promote it? I didn't see that.
She's been on not stages as Discord. She's been on, what's the thing? Spaces, defending the whole thing. She's been pushing it.
This is unfettered capitalism at work.
This
Dave.
is capitalism. And you know what? It kind of is.
3 minutes.
It really kind of is. Let me find, hold on. Oh, it says Hawk. That's the one right there. Want to steal $50 million? Well, the Haktua girl did. Hakta. She launched a coin, rug pulled it, and then shamelessly went to sleep like nothing happened. Here's how Hakta stole $50 million from her fans. We don't have time to go so deep into it, but you guys know who this girl is, probably. Unfortunately, she's famous for a viral video from downtown Nashville, and then she has a podcast, I guess, a show. And
she's been on lots of shows.
And now she launched a meme coin, which sounds like a great investment to me. And I don't exactly understand how all this stuff works, but it seems like over 90% of it was essentially owned by either her or friends or the people who started the coin or whatever. A bunch of people bought in and then they sold it. Now, in the regular stocks, when you're an owner, an IPO, when that gets released, you actually have a certain amount of time before you can sell those IPO shares. And I'm assuming there are less rules and regulations around that. But you know what? I'm fine with that.
This isn't the first rug pull that's happened in crypto.
I'm fine with it. Because if you took a bunch of money and bought a Hawk coin from the blowjob girl from the Nashville streets, what's most important, the way you regulate this is that people learn lessons. Mm-hmm. That is what actually has to happen. And for whatever reason, if you actually put a bunch of money in this, I mean, there are claims going around of people that put a bunch of money in. I think some of them are jokes. Kind of that's what needs to happen, honestly, because that is a stupid decision.
And then enough of those people get mad at her in this story that she loses all of her fame.
Also, if she knowingly did this, then that's really dumb on her part too, because she had a lot of goodwill with people. Funny video goes around, viral video goes around. She's got a stupid podcast. I don't know what she even talks about on it. And, you know, she's got fans. She's actually become an actual celebrity that people might listen to, and she might have a good career doing that. And then she launches this in rug pulls, and I don't think it's going to go very well for her. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this week, every single Tuesday night on Free Talk Live. That was, of course, Dumb Bleep of the Week. And if you want to get your submissions in, then go to joingml.com. GML stands for Good Morning Liberty. Find that on your favorite podcast app. 1,429 episodes. But if you don't do that, we'll see you again in 1 week.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp.